Chapter 1607. Blade of the Divine Range. The power of the Divine Range continued to converge, forming a long blade in Xing Qingzi's hand. The long saber was slender, about 7 feet long. The body of the saber was silver-white, and on it, mysterious patterns spread out, releasing a green light, as if it was an extension of the divine veins. The moment he grasped the blade, Xing Qingzi's divine range began to tremble. His true yuan, which had already reached the peak of the demigod realm, skyrocketed because of the divine range. "Today, I'll use your life to open the blade of my divine range." Xing Qingzi let out a roar. The saber in his hand suddenly emitted sharp saber glows. Unlike Feng Wuji, who had overdrawn his true yuan after using a strange power, Xing Qingzi wasn't injured at all despite using a large amount of the divine range's power. Coupled with his peak demigod true yuan, Xing Qingzi was much stronger than before. Tianyang's expression turned solemn, and the great void sword embryo in his hand also released sharp blade light. With a stomp of his feet, he leaped up and charged toward Xing Qingzi. Apart from the sword Dao origin, Tianyang had absorbed all the other origins into his dantian, leaving only the sword Dao origin to meet Xing Qingzi head-on. Instead of using his treasures, he's using his own strength to fight against a divine range owner? The Realm Lord couldn't help but frown and shake his head at Tianyang's actions. It seemed that although Yang Tian had an extraordinary background, he still lacked battle experience. Even if Yang Tian had used some unknown method to reach the peak of the demigod realm, Xing Qingzi was also at the peak of the demigod realm. The cultivation advantage he'd had against Li Xuanzang instantly vanished. Moreover, Xing Qingzi had the divine range. Divine range owners were natural-born sovereigns. They were unrivaled in the same realm, and it wasn't impossible for them to fight someone of a higher realm. It wasn't wise to give up on his killing move that had killed so many people and use his own strength to meet Xing Qingzi head-on. Boom! While the Realm Lord was pondering, Tianyang fully activated the stellar sword body and the myriad star sword world, clashing with Xing Qingzi's divine range blade. Boom! Boom! Although the sword and blade had only collided once, the terrifying energy ripples that were created caused space to tremble. Soon after, the energy ripples turned into an energy storm, and the trembling space exploded apart, turning into an incomparably terrifying spatial turbulence. Countless spatial fragments were released around the collision between the two of them, forming a ring that no one dared to approach. It surrounded the two people in the middle of the battle and blocked the others outside, turning into a natural martial arts stage. He actually blocked it? Seeing the great void sword embryo clashing with his blade of divine range, Xing Qingzi's pupils contracted. His blade of divine range was indestructible, but it couldn't break this black sword that didn't have any divine realm aura? However, a moment later, Xing Qingzi's expression turned vicious again. "So what if it's not broken? I, Xing Qingzi, am the strongest prodigy of the Lingfeng realm." Xing Qingzi roared as his entire body was occupied by divine vein runes. Then, a mighty divine vein power sword. Seeing this, Feng Wuqiong's body shook as he looked at Xing Qingzi in disbelief. This move, could it be that it already has the power of the top 200 on the True Dragon roll? Azure World! Xing Qingzi roared as his surroundings were covered in azure. "Today, I shall be the Azure Tharch. Azure Tharch Divine Range, Azure Sea Sky Blade." In the blink of an eye, the silver-white blade shot out a jade-green light. Immediately after, the veins that belonged to the divine pulse appeared on the dark green blade. However, although it was azure green, they were still emitting terrifying murderous intents. "Kill!" Xing Qingzi roared as his divine vein power exploded. That resplendent blade light slashed viciously at Tianyang. Seeing this, Tianyang raised an eyebrow, a look of surprise in his eyes. Was this the true power of the divine vein? However, before Tianyang could ponder for long, that dazzling light appeared before Tianyang. Boom! 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 The powerful divine vein power even messed up the laws of heaven and earth. In an instant, other than the most basic space-time laws, all the other laws were messed up. The most obvious was the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Apart from the spiritual energy that Tianyang had already devoured, the rest of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth went berserk. Although the spiritual energy of heaven and earth flowed slightly, it was extremely slow. Most of the time, it was in a relatively calm state. However, just as the slash was about to land, a voice suddenly rang out. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth split into countless streams and flew in different directions. In addition, the surrounding temperature had also undergone an incomparably strange change. The temperature within 1 centimeter was normal. However, a centimeter away from him, it suddenly turned into a lava hell. The temperature reached a terrifying level. Another centimeter away, this extreme heat turned into an incomparably terrifying solid ice. Under the effect of this divine vein, the laws of the entire martial arts stage became incomparably chaotic. The godly state controlled the power of laws. This was the most powerful effect of the divine vein power. It had taken Xing Qingzi a long time to comprehend his strongest attack, so it was only natural that he would be able to unleash this attack's power to its fullest potential. After many years of tempering, today's slash is complete. Even that treasure of yours won't be able to block this slash. Xing Qingzi laughed wildly. Although the slash couldn't interfere with the laws of space everywhere, it could. Using a trace of power to seal Tianyang's space was abnormally easy. Even if Tianyang had a treasure that could overturn the battle, he couldn't take it out and change the outcome of the battle. Is this all you've got? Upon hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and curled his lips into a faint smile. Circulating all the power of the divine veins, exerting the power of the divine veins to the limit, and slashing out his strongest saber strike? There was nothing wrong with his train of thought. Unfortunately, he had made a huge mistake in his estimation of his own strength. Well, since you've unleashed your full strength, I'll show you some respect. Tianyang smiled, and the great void sword embryo in his hand released the pure white light of the sky sword again. Then, surging martial soul power bloomed from Tianyang's body and sword. It was similar to the sky-devouring secret skill, but it released an extremely terrifying and domineering energy. No matter how powerful you are, you can only die now. Seeing this, Xing Qingzi sneered disdainfully and sped up his slash again. As for the heavenly sun, it only took him a single breath to finish condensing this attack. Second martial soul talent, Sky Sword. Tianyang roared and slashed out with his sword. A pure white sword light that was so white that it was blazing flattened all the chaotic laws and clashed with Xing Qingzi's azure Dharch blade. Boom! Boom! End of chapter. Chapter 1608. A series of deafening noises sounded, accompanied by cracks in space. The entire battlefield was almost riddled with holes. Fang Wuqiong was the first to change his expression. He flashed away from the center of the battle. It looked like a battle between two peak demigods that could be easily suppressed by a godly state expert. However, the current situation was different. Even the Realm Master's emissary wasn't confident that he could stop the battle, let alone an ordinary godly state expert. Xing Qingzi is still manageable, but where did this Yang Tian come from? Fang Wuqiong swallowed his saliva and said in disbelief. Fang Wuqiong wasn't surprised at all that a godly pulse owner could create miracles. However, this Yang Tian Fang Wuqiong was certain that Haomen, which had been in decline for a long time and was facing the siege of the three major sects, couldn't have nurtured such a powerful genius. Why isn't he dead yet? Xing Qingzi's true origin was burned to the limit, and the power of his godly pulse was unleashed to the maximum. His entire body was dyed green, and the godly pulse veins were shining from his body and completely transferred to the surface of his body. It was obvious that the light had reached its limit. His strength and all his trump cards had already been revealed. However, he still couldn't break through. His opponent was just an attack that he thought was extremely lowly and had spent a breath to condense. I am the owner of the godly pulse. I am the invincible existence in the world. How can a lowly ant from the cloud fire territory fight against me? Xing Qingzi roared. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. You're not from the cloud fire territory? Xing Qingzi's expression froze, and then it became extremely ferocious. Cloud fire territory? How is that possible? I left the cloud fire territory and took everyone from my family with me. There's nothing left in the cloud fire territory that belongs to me. How can I be from there? Xing Qingzi roared, as if he had been provoked. His Zhen Yuan, which had already reached its limit, erupted once more. However, Tianyang raised his eyebrows, but his expression did not change. He increased the power of his heavenly sword. No matter how strong Xing Qingzi was, to Tianyang, it was just an additional source of origin energy. Now, apart from the sword Dao origin, he had nothing else to use. Seeing Xing Qingzi's face becoming more and more ferocious, as if he was about to go mad, Tianyang's lips curled up slightly. Then, isn't your holy meridian still in the cloud fire territory? Tianyang chuckled and casually said this sentence. Hearing those words, Xing Qingzi was stunned. His entire body seemed to freeze at that moment. Even the quintessential essence and the power of the divine veins that he was transferring to the Azure Emperor's blade stopped at that moment. Tianyang's voice wasn't loud, but everyone present had powerful senses. As long as one listened attentively, the slightest movement of grass in the wind was nothing difficult. Tianyang didn't deliberately block the conversation, so his words fell into everyone's ears. From the cloud fire territory? What does that mean? Fang Wuji and Lin Shan were stunned and looked at Xing Qingzi in confusion. Xing Qingzi seemed to be from the cloud fire territory. In that case, wasn't it normal for the Holy Meridian to come from the cloud fire territory? However, after a short pause, Xing Qingzi began to tremble again. Impossible! The Holy Meridian belongs to me, Xing Qingzi. The person who had this Holy Meridian was killed by my father long ago. And all of his clansmen, all of them were killed by my own hands. The Holy Meridian is mine. It will always be mine. Xing Qingzi roared crazily, completely ignoring the Azure Emperor's blade that was still in progress. However, even if Tianyang hadn't interfered, the long blade that used the power of the Holy Meridian as the main body was still crumbling. The Holy Meridian didn't belong to him. It never belonged to him. Xing Qingzi had always been aware of this, which was why he had tried his best to hunt down everyone from the Cloudfire territory. Unfortunately, someone who wasn't any weaker than him had come in front of him and exposed the lie he had used to deceive himself. In the end, these crazy excuses were of no use at all. Ah! Xing Qingzi screamed as the holy meridian patterns on the surface of his body burned with blazing flames. Then, these flames ignited Xing Qingzi, and the long blade formed by the power of the holy meridian also crumbled and disappeared. Everything had a spirit, and so did the holy meridian. Normally, Xing Qingzi could completely suppress it with his strength, but when Tianyang's words pushed Xing Qingzi to the brink of qi deviation, the holy meridian erupted. The result of this was the source of Xing Qingzi's power, the Azure Emperor's holy meridian, had voluntarily left Xing Qingzi's body. No, no, no! Seeing this, Xing Qingzi couldn't care less about the endless pain caused by the countless flames burning his body. His eyes were filled with fear as he screamed in panic. Even if he had reached the peak of the demigod realm, even if he had lost the holy meridian, he could still stand in the top 700 of the true dragon roll. However, as the fundamental reason why Xing Qingzi had such a high status, the holy meridian was even more important to him than his true yuan. No! Xing Qingzi kept reaching out, but the more he reached out, the faster the holy meridian was leaving him. In just a few dozen seconds, the holy meridian runes were no longer shining brightly on Xing Qingzi's body. Apart from his aura being that was still at the peak of the demigod realm, everything else was different from before. His head of green hair also changed rapidly, turning into an extremely ordinary black color. The holy meridian left Xing Qingzi? Seeing this, everyone was stunned. Waves of shock surged in his heart. In other words, what Xing Qingzi had roared out in anger was all true. His holy meridian had been stolen from someone else? Bullshit. Someone immediately snorted and spat out a mouthful of saliva. That person happened to be from the ancient Tao sect, but he was lucky enough to enter the final round as the weakest. No, Xing Qingzi, who had lost his holy meridian, completely collapsed. Even if he still had his cultivation, there was nothing he could do. Tianyang looked at the holy meridian that was still burning in the sky and his heart trembled. It was as if something had disappeared. The karma he had received from the sloppy old man was over. At this moment, the self-burning holy meridian suddenly released a ray of light. Then, it completely self-destructed. The previous owner was dead, so there was no reason for the holy meridian to remain. At this moment, an unforeseen event occurred. An azure token shot out from Tianyang's interspatial bag. After the holy meridian burned out, a ray of light shot out and entered the token. That is. End of chapter. Chapter 1609. A ray of light suddenly shot out of the self-destructing divine pulse and collided with the green token that had suddenly broken out of Tianyang's space bag. However, the collision between the two didn't cause any energy fluctuations. Instead, the ray of light shot out by the self-destructing divine pulse was directly swallowed by the green token. After swallowing the ray of light, the green token fell and returned to Tianyang's hand. The divine pulse had completely self-destructed. From then on, there was no more divine pulse in the entire divine realm. This is the token of the Green Lotus Palace left behind by the primordial emperor after he was defeated? Tianyang raised his eyebrows in surprise as he looked at the green token that had fallen back into his hand. Ever since he had broken through to the Saint Emperor realm and defeated the primordial emperor and obtained the Green Lotus Palace token, there had been no movement from the token. If it weren't for Jiang Xian from the mysterious Jiang clan who had seen through the token, Tianyang probably wouldn't have known what the token was for. However, now it seemed that the token could actually absorb the power of the divine pulse. It was much more extraordinary than Tianyang had imagined. Speaking of which, if I want to know more about the Green Lotus Palace, I'll have to communicate with Jiang Xian. Tianyang muttered as he put away the token. Back then, Jiang Xian had invited him to the Jiang clan to be her guest. Even if he didn't go, he had 3 years to change his mind. Now, less than half a year had passed since those 3 years had passed. Tianyang had to make a trip there. However, before that, I'll have to deal with the matter of the Lingfeng realm first. Tianyang collected his thoughts and then turned to look at Xing Qingzi, who had lost his divine pulse and was completely devoid of green. As if sensing Tianyang's gaze, Xing Qingzi abruptly raised his head, his eyes filled with madness. The power of my godly pulse! Xing Qingzi madly clutched his right hand and roared. Previously, he had used his right hand to condense and activate the power of his divine pulse. Before the divine pulse left him, it had burned most terrifyingly in his right hand. Therefore, after the divine pulse left, Xing Qingzi's right hand had almost been crippled by the flames condensed by the divine pulse. You! Xing Qingzi looked at Tianyang with hatred. However, Tianyang had acted before him. Although the following karma has been settled, Tianyang's lips curled into a dazzling smile. It seems that the karma between us hasn't been settled yet. Then, the great void sword embryo in Tianyang's hand spat out a sharp sword light. Previously, Xing Qingzi had been able to look down on this sword light, which wasn't considered too strong. But now it was just a small sword light. It seemed to have the power to kill him. No. You can't kill me. I'm the strongest disciple of the ancient Tao sect's younger generation. My master is the strongest elder of the ancient Tao sect. Xing Qingzi anxiously roared. However, Tianyang didn't stop at all. Don't you get tired of hearing these words? Then, his sword fell. The strongest disciple of the ancient Tao sect, Xing Qingzi, had died. Clean and tidy. Seeing this, countless people were dumbfounded. They didn't expect this. Xing Qingzi, who had prepared so much for the prodigy competition and had even hidden his strength to enter the top 200 of the True Dragon ranking, would die in such a manner. Before dying, he had even torn apart his own bloody past for them to see. Sigh, Feng Wuji sighed. However, it was just a sigh. Now, here's the problem. Tianyang withdrew his sword and shook off the blood on the great void sword embryo. 10 balls of light lit up on his body. I'll take first place in the prodigy competition. Who's against it? Tianyang smiled faintly. Around him, the 10 essences gave off an uncertain light. Just like before, his expression was bright and warm, and his words weren't very aggressive. However, the moment they saw the 10 balls of light, everyone who wanted to speak shut their mouth. They didn't want to die. They had clearly seen that the terrifying attack that almost wiped out the remaining 20 or so people was unleashed through these 10 balls of light. According to the rules, Tianyang had just attacked everyone. Logically speaking, they could have attacked Tianyang. With the strength of more than 20 Lingfeng realm prodigies, it shouldn't be difficult to defeat Tianyang. Unfortunately, Xing Qingzi's head was still there. The entire place was dead silent. If that's the case, the emissary shouldn't have any objections, right? Tianyang turned his head and smiled. Hearing this, the emissary could only remain silent. According to the rules, there were still several rounds to determine the first place. However, in the current situation, now that they weren't sure, continuing to drag it out would just be a waste of time. Then, the first place of this tournament of prodigies is decided in advance. It is Haomen Yang Tian, said the emissary. Hearing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the emissary was reasonable. Otherwise, if he insisted on sticking to the rules, Yang Tian would be the one in trouble. They would be the ones being beaten. Although Tianyang was gone and the first place was gone, the remaining people were much more relieved. Next, after half a day's rest, the 2nd to 24th place will be rearranged, said the emissary. Hearing this, everyone immediately fled the battle arena as if they were avoiding the plague. If it weren't for the fact that they would lose as soon as they left, they wouldn't be willing to stand in the same place as Tianyang. The first place will get the top 30 and top 10 prizes first, said the emissary. Hearing this, everyone was not in a hurry to recover. They all looked up. They also wanted to know which treasures Heavenly Sun would choose from among the many treasures. The emissary waved his hand. Thousands of treasures appeared in front of the emissary in an instant. The entire sky was filled with countless quasi-divine artifacts. The top 30 will be rewarded with a semi-divine artifact of your choice. The top 10 will be rewarded with a divine artifact of your choice, or a god-level cultivation technique, and a material, said the emissary indifferently. However, hearing this, some people who had never entered the top 10 suddenly widened their eyes and revealed an extremely covetous look. Putting aside the semi-divine artifacts, divine artifacts and god-level cultivation techniques were super treasures that could only be found by chance. Even the 3 major sects like the Skycloud Palace might not have them. Tianyang was also slightly taken aback. He was shocked by the generosity of the Lingfeng realm's emissary. However, he immediately reacted and scanned with his spiritual power. In an instant, he obtained all the information about these treasures. I've chosen, said Tianyang. In the next moment, among the thousands of treasures, a broken black sword and a long ice sword appeared in Tianyang's hand. Why did Yang Tian choose this? Seeing this, some people were stunned. The emissary was also surprised for a moment before he came back to his senses. Since you've chosen, come with me. Hearing this, Tianyang's eyes lit up. Next, there was no doubt. The reward for first place in the Tournament of Prodigies. End of chapter. Chapter 16:10. The prize for the champion of the Tournament of Prodigies. Then, the Realm Master and Tianyang disappeared from the battle space. After the two of them left, the crowd started to discuss among themselves. If I'm not wrong, that broken black sword seems to be the weakest of the semi-divine weapons. I don't know why the Realm Master put it among the semi-divine weapons. Judging by its aura, I'm afraid it's not even a divine weapon. It's probably just there to make up the numbers. But the people from Hauman, everyone's faces revealed traces of doubt, but in the end, there was no conclusion. The people from Hauman had given them too many surprises. As a result, no one dared to judge the black sword casually. However, Feng Wuji closed his eyes. Similarly, a trace of doubt appeared on his face. Why are there so many things that I can't divine recently? He had just tried to use the power of destiny to divine the uniqueness of the black sword. However, he only knew that the black sword was indeed a broken sword and that it was made of extraordinary materials. He couldn't find out anything more. He felt that he would suffer a terrible backlash if he tried to delve any deeper. Forget it. The people from Hauman are full of secret. I can't divine it. Feng Wuji pursed his lips and let the matter go. However, he was still confused. He couldn't divine the black sword, but he was able to see the ice sword clearly. Although it was a divine weapon, it was only a divine weapon. Yang Tian already has a sword that belongs to him, why would he need another one? While the Lingfeng realm prodigies in the martial arts space were puzzled, Tianyang had already arrived in another small world through several spatial transmissions. It was similar to the Burial Valley. It was one of the countless small worlds on Lingyun Peak. However, the energy it exuded was much milder than the Burial Valley. Although the top 3 prizes in the previous Tournament of Prodigies were to cultivate in the treasured land on Lingyun Peak, it wasn't the Fairy Cloud Cave. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. Why did it change? It's just that the previous reward has long been damaged after many supreme talents have cultivated it. Although there's still some energy left, there's not much left. It can only be used as a reward for the 3rd to 10th place. This celestial cloud cave was only discovered in the recent 100 years. We have yet to explore it. We only know that the cultivation environment here is not inferior to the previous cultivation treasure ground. However, whether or not there is an opportunity other than the cultivation environment inside, and what kind of opportunity it is, even the Realm Lord doesn't know. The Realm Master Emissary spoke, his expression calm. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. So this was still a virgin land? Am I here to be a lab rat? However, don't be greedy. The cultivation environment of the Immortal Cloud Cave is countless times better than the outside world since a long time ago. Even the minor world that the Realm Lord bestowed to me is inferior to this Immortal Cloud Cave. Using the Immortal Cloud Cave as your reward for first place is long since sufficient. The Realm Master Emissary said indifferently. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly. Although he had yet to enter the Immortal Cloud Cave, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that was released from it, even if it was just a trace of it, was far superior to the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in Hauman. If he entered it, he wondered how strong the spiritual chi of heaven and earth would be inside. The time for you to cultivate is 3 months. During these 3 months you can enter and leave at any time, but you must not disturb other cultivators. Let me remind you, although there is not much danger in the Immortal Cloud Cave, the deeper you go, the greater the pressure you will have to bear. If you go too deep, even a godly state expert may not have the strength to escape unscathed. The Realm Master Emissary said indifferently. Then a silver light flashed. The Realm Master Emissary disappeared, leaving Tianyang alone. The deeper I go, the stronger the spiritual chi of heaven and earth? Hearing this, the corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up. Originally, because Xing Qingzi's holy pulse had been snatched away by the Green Lotus Palace token, Tianyang thought that it was almost impossible for him to break through to the peak of the Holy King level. However, the Immortal Cloud Cave gave Tianyang a chance. 3 months. In this kind of cultivation environment, I can consolidate my previous gains. Tianyang smiled and disappeared into the Immortal Cloud Cave in a flash. In the Immortal Cloud Cave, other than being a huge cave, there was nothing different about its appearance. However, the moment he stepped in, terrifying spiritual chi of heaven and earth surged wildly toward Tianyang. Although the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth was extremely gentle, it covered the sky and the earth, making it seem incomparably powerful. Boom! Like a huge wave crashing against a huge rock, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth bombarded Tianyang's body, creating a series of loud bangs. He had only entered a little, but the spiritual chi of heaven and earth had already formed a huge wave. Just this alone was enough to make those below the Holy King level unable to withstand it. Not bad. Tianyang smiled softly. This bit of impact was nothing to him. Using the indestructible body and stellar sword body, he strode in. The deeper he went, the denser the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was, just as the Realm Lord had said. The impact of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was also growing stronger. After just a few hundred steps, Tianyang sensed that the spiritual chi of heaven and earth had already reached the great saint level. If Tianyang was still a half-holy king, he might be able to rely on the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to reach the Holy King level. However, for Tianyang, who was now a mid-holy king, it was still a little lacking. The Immortal Cloud Cave was filled with white mist. Although the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was dense, it did not form Jiang He due to some kind of power. Tianyang seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll in the celestial cloud cave. His skin rippled slightly as he endured the impact of the heaven and earth spiritual chi. After a few thousand steps, Tianyang's inner yuan trembled slightly. It seems that this is the most suitable spiritual chi of heaven and earth for a mid-holy king. Tianyang smiled. However, he did not stop here. This was the limit of his inner yuan, but it was far from the limit of his physical body. The stellar sword body, the terrifying physical body that was tempered by the indestructible body, had far surpassed the cultivation level of his inner yuan. After an unknown number of steps, Tianyang finally stopped. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth was still formless, turning into white mist. However, it now seemed to be walking in a physical body. The frequency of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth had reached a terrifying level. Walking in it, it was like walking through a mountain. It's about here. Tianyang smiled and sat cross-legged on the ground. However, if the Realm Lord and the Realm Lord knew where Tianyang was, they would probably be dumbfounded. Compared to the most suitable location for a mid-holy king, this place was many times deeper. Cultivating here, even those godly realm experts might not be able to withstand it. The divine wilderness heavenly spirit art was activated. Tianyang closed his eyes and entered a state of cultivation. White mist condensed above Tianyang's head the moment Tianyang entered the state of cultivation. It condensed into 3 flowers of Tao, slowly blooming. 9 saint paths and 10 origins were also released unconsciously. They surrounded Tianyang. His true essence was also rising at a steady but not slow speed. End of chapter. Chapter 16:11. 3 months later. Tianyang slowly opened his eyes. It wasn't because the Realm Lord had summoned him, but because Tianyang thought it was time to open his eyes. The inner yuan in his body, as vast as a galaxy, had all entered his dantian and his 10 origins. The 3 Tao flowers above his head slowly dissipated. Tianyang's eyes also released rays of bright light. Peak Holy Emperor in 3 months. Not bad. Tianyang smiled faintly and stood up. Instantly, a surging aura erupted from his body. The immortal clouds and white mist that seemed to have materialized were also swept into an incomparably chaotic state by this aura. After 3 months of cultivation in the immortal cloud cave, Tianyang had officially stepped into the peak Holy Emperor realm. It was a pity that Xing Qingzi's divine pulse had self-destructed, and the remaining power had been absorbed by the Green Lotus Palace token. Otherwise, Tianyang would be preparing to break through to the demigod realm. Although his cultivation had only broken through 2 minor realms, Tianyang's current strength had increased by more than 20% compared to before. In these 3 months, Tianyang had once again refined the indestructible body and cultivated the immortal divine body from beginning to end. Other than the indestructible soul that he was still unable to cultivate, Tianyang had already mastered the first 4 stages of the immortal divine body to perfection. Although his physical body hadn't become a god yet, it wasn't far from it. Moreover, he devoured all the 9th-level spiritual fires he'd obtained from Zhao Kongyan. The true flames of destruction were now infinitely close to the godly divine fire, and not much worse than the immortal divine fire. In addition, his inner yuan had broken through. 3 months was a huge profit. But if I can cultivate here for longer, I might really break through to the demigod realm. Tianyang smiled faintly and looked back with pity. Cultivating in the immortal cloud cave was better than anywhere else in the god realm for Tianyang. However, it was only for 3 months. Otherwise, Tianyang would at least be a half-step demigod. The tournament of prodigies took about half a year. I wonder how Haomen is doing now. With a flash, Tianyang left the immortal cloud cave. On the way, he also saw Tian Xuanzi and Ji Mingkai. These 2 people had entered the top 3. Tianyang was not surprised. However, Tian Xuanzi's depth was clearly greater than Ji Mingkai's. As expected of Skycloud Palace's leader. If Li Xuanzang hadn't been so stupid as to pick a fight with Tianyang, there would have been a place for him in the immortal cloud cave. I'm leaving. Tianyang's figure flashed and left the immortal cloud cave. However, he did not notice that no matter if it was Fang Wuqiong or Ji Mingkai, the 3 flowers at one's prominence and 5 Qis unification did not appear above their heads. Entering the immortal cloud cave required a realm master to bring him along, but leaving was much easier. After using the 9th change of the heaven's expanse 9 changes a few times, Tianyang left the immortal cloud cave and returned to the Lingyun Peak. Before leaving, Tianyang turned back to look at the Lingyun Peak. This Lingyun Peak was definitely not created by the legendary emperor of the Lingyun realm. After all, this was a place that even Emperor Tsang Wu had chosen to cultivate in with great care. In addition to the various strange small worlds, this Lingyun Peak was definitely not ordinary. It was a pity that Tianyang's current strength was still too low. Otherwise, he would have been able to explore this Lingyun Peak. Haomen is over there. At this moment, the lazy voice of the demonized heaven's expanse Saint Spirit rang out. Got it. Tianyang nodded. In a flash, he flew in the direction that the demonized heaven's expanse Saint Spirit had pointed out. Yang Tian is in the top 50 of the Prodigy Grand Competition. I, Haomen, am also under the protection of the Realm Master. Why is the ancient Tao sect still here? Outside Haomen, First Elder Haomen's face darkened. He looked at the godly state expert from the ancient Tao sect who had been waiting outside Haomen for 3 months. First Elder Haomen did not recognize this godly state expert. However, from his robes and the aura that he exuded, he could tell that he was from the ancient Tao sect. Why would someone from the ancient Tao sect wait outside Haomen's door for 3 months? How could he figure it out? However, First Elder Haomen could not do anything to this godly state expert. Although First Elder Haomen and Second Elder teamed up, or the 5 old reverends, they could fight against a godly state expert. However, although it was a fight, their chances of winning were less than 30%. If it was not the most urgent moment, Haomen would not dare to rashly make a move against this godly state expert. I'm only here as a guest. Do you, Haoman, want to interfere? The godly state expert from the ancient Tao sect said sinisterly. Waves of godly state aura were released, directly oppressing First Elder Haoman to the point that he could not breathe. First Elder Haoman's pupils suddenly shrank when he sensed this aura. This godly state expert was no ordinary godly state expert. He was probably not weak even among godly state experts. Even if the 5 old reverends teamed up, their chances of winning were less than 30%. Yang Tian will be back soon. Yang Tian is first place in the Prodigy Grand Competition. If you make a move against Yang Tian, the Realm Master will definitely not let this matter rest. First Elder Haoman forced himself to calm down and stared fixedly at the godly state expert from the ancient Tao sect. Hearing this, the godly state expert from the ancient Tao sect raised an eyebrow and revealed a mocking expression. You mean to say that my ancient Tao sect's godly state expert is afraid of a mid-stage holy king? Following this, the godly state expert's aura completely erupted. First Elder Haoman, who had been able to hold on just a moment ago, immediately had a drastic change in expression. He took a few steps back as the blood in his body churned. The meaning of these words was already very clear. Could it be that your ancient Tao sect dares to ignore the Realm Master's protection? First Elder Haoman shouted angrily. However, the godly state expert from the ancient Tao sect immediately sneered in disdain. His white hair was withered, and the wrinkles on his face had accumulated into a lump, making him look incomparably terrifying and sinister. The Realm Master's protection is to protect the top 50 factions from being destroyed. How can the Realm Master take care of ordinary factions? You, Haoman, my ancient Tao sect naturally will not destroy you. The ancient Tao sect also does not plan to touch the Heaven Emperor's inheritance. However, killing a mere disciple should not be a problem, right? Not to mention that this fellow killed my ancient Tao sect's strongest disciple, Xing Qingzi. Even the deaths of Zhao Kongyan and the other disciples might be related to him. An eye for an eye. The godly state expert from the ancient Tao sect said sinisterly. First Elder Haoman's expression changed drastically when he heard this. Then, he planned to send a message to Haoman to have the second elder and the 5 old sovereigns attack and force the godly state expert from the ancient Tao sect to retreat. However, just as the message was sent out, it stopped halfway. Do you think that as a godly state expert who controls the laws, I can't even block a message from a demigod? The godly state expert from the ancient Tao sect sneered. Then, he raised his head and looked at the black dot in the sky that was getting closer and closer. Finally here. I've really waited for a long time. End of chapter. Chapter 1612. Ha ha ha. My 3 months of waiting outside Haoman was not in vain, just to wait for this guy to come back. Seeing that the black dot was getting closer and closer to him, the godly state cultivator of the ancient path sect laughed maniacally. He let go of the suppression on Great Elder Haoman and charged towards Tianyang. Seeing this, Great Elder Haoman's eyes narrowed. In the next moment, he shouted and sent a message back to Haoman. Second Elder, 5 honored elders, come out and prepare for battle. Then, Great Elder Haoman attacked instantly. A beam of light shot towards the godly state cultivator of the ancient path sect. However, the godly state cultivator of the ancient path sect laughed coldly. He did not even turn his head and shattered the beam of light. Seeing this, Great Elder Haoman's expression changed slightly. This godly state cultivator of the ancient path sect was much stronger than he had imagined. Lord Spirit of the Temple, Lord Tianyang is back. At this moment, Great Elder Haoman finally remembered that there was still a powerful being in Haoman. He quickly sent a message over. Unlike the second elder and 5 honored elders who took a while to reply, the vast expanse Holy Spirit replied almost immediately after the message was sent. Tianyang is back? When? Wait a minute, Isn't there another godly state cultivator of the ancient path sect outside? Although it was only a few lines of text, one could see the concern and urgency in it. Although he felt that it was not right for these words to appear on the spirit of the temple, Great Elder Howman did not pay much attention to it. Instead, he looked at the godly state cultivator of the ancient path sect, who was getting closer and closer to Tianyang, and quickly sent a message over. That's right. That godly state cultivator is already charging towards Lord Tianyang. I'm afraid that Lord Tianyang, Second Elder, 5 honored elders. What are you waiting for? Great Elder, hold him back. I'll be there soon. This message was not sent through Great Elder Howman's communication method. Instead, it was sent directly into Great Elder Howman's mind through the vast expanse Holy Spirit's special power. Just by hearing it, one could tell that the vast expanse Saint Spirit was extremely anxious. After all, that was a god rank from the ancient Tao sect. The Great Sun sect and the ancient Tao sect were two completely different concepts. Similarly, the ancient Tao sect's godly realm expert and Deng Zhangquan were two completely different concepts. When Tianyang was a mid-saint king, he had only managed to kill one of Deng Zhangquan's clones after unleashing his strongest heaven world. Although he didn't know how much his strength had improved after half a year of the prodigy competition, the godly realm cultivators of the ancient path sect were not to be underestimated. In less than 10 seconds, the heavens expanse Holy Spirit brought the Howman's second elder and the Howman's 5 old masters out of Howman. Where is Tianyang? The heavens expanse Saint Spirit said hurriedly. At the side, the 5 old reverends, who were originally standing on Jiang He's side and were extremely hostile towards Tianyang, were also slightly moved. Although in their hearts, Jiang He was the rightful successor, they couldn't deny that Jiang Hao was also qualified to be the successor. As for the Tianyang that Jiang Hao had brought back, although he had forcefully taken over Howman, he had also saved Howman from the crisis of being wiped out. He had also brought Howman unprecedented glory. First place in the prodigy competition. Although being first place in the prodigy competition didn't mean that Howman was very strong, and it also didn't mean that Howman could really nurture a powerful genius who was first place in the prodigy competition. However, after this battle, Howman's reputation had been completely established. It seems like it's time for Howman to make a change. The leader of the 5 old reverends sighed and looked at the heavens expanse Saint Spirit who had charged forward. Perhaps the spirit of the temple is really right. When the heavens expanse Saint Spirit had tried to open up Howman and recruit new disciples, he was the one who had opposed it. Now, he was the one who had slapped himself in the face. 5 old reverends, let's go and save Tianyang. The leader of the 5 old reverends shouted. Then, his peak demigod True Yuan exploded as he charged forward. Hearing this, the other 5 old reverends were stunned. Sect leader? However, in the next moment they understood. They nodded and charged forward. This meant that Jiang He no longer had the support of the elders. The sect leader of Howman was done. You didn't expect this, did you? I'm a godly state. I should be receiving incense and worship in the ancient Tao sect. I don't even need to do anything. Instead, I've been waiting outside this trash of Howman for 3 whole months. The godly state of the ancient Tao sect laughed sinisterly as he looked at Tianyang, whose path was blocked by him. Indeed. Tianyang nodded. He didn't expect the ancient Tao sect to be so free. The godly state of the ancient Tao sect paused. Then, he laughed sinisterly. It seems that you know your place. In that case, I won't introduce myself. You killed my last disciple, Xing Qingzi, Bright Flame Heavenly King Zhao Kongyan, and dozens of my ancient Tao sect disciples. Hand over the divine bloodline power you obtained from Xing Qingzi, then break your own limbs and cripple your own cultivation. That way you can keep your life. The godly state of the ancient Tao sect laughed coldly as his godly state aura erupted. Then, it condensed into a force that was as heavy as a mountain and pressed down on the heavenly sun. You're Xing Qingzi's master? Reverend Qing Gu of the ancient Tao sect? Tianyang was stunned. He looked at the hunchbacked old man with a disdainful sneer. He thought that as Xing Qingzi's master, he would be a little better looking. However, instead of avenging your disciple, you want your disciple's belongings? What kind of master are you? Tianyang clicked his tongue in wonder. The terrifying aura of the godly state continued to press down on Tianyang's body. However, Tianyang, who had experienced the surging spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the celestial cloud cave, was not afraid of this. Even if the aura was doubled, Tianyang could still move freely. Noisy. Venerable Qing Gu's expression darkened. It seems that you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. A moment later, wisps of green divine force burst out. Ancient Tao sect, stop it! At this moment, the Grand Elder and Second Elder of the Vast Gate, as well as the 5 patriarchs, roared and charged forward. Heaven-Earth Origin Spirit Lock. Great Elder and Second Elder attacked at the same time. Powerful sealing forces were unleashed, turning into mystical chains of laws that shot toward Venerable Qing Gu. At the same time, the 5 old venerables finished executing their secret technique. They roared and attacked. Heaven-Earth Fist. A giant fist descended from the sky and slammed toward Venerable Qing Gu. At the same time, countless artifacts were activated, unleashing a series of ferocious attacks. Great Elder Haomen harumphed coldly. Even an ordinary godly state expert would be injured by such an attack. Even if the godly state expert of the ancient Tao sect was stronger, he would not be able to continue attacking Tianyang. Sect Master, let's go! The leader of the 5 old venerables roared. Tianyang was startled. Sect Master? Venerable Qing Gu, on the other hand, had a strange smile on his face. You dare to compete with me with such insignificant skills? The next moment, streaks of blue godly power suddenly struggled. Boom! The Heaven-Earth Origin Spirit Lock and the Giant Fist were shattered at this moment. Haomen and the other 6 old venerables spat out blood and were sent flying. End of chapter. Chapter 1613. Boom! With a loud bang, the 7 people who tried to stop Tianyang were sent flying with blood spurting out of their mouth. At the same time, streaks of green divine power, like maggots in tarsal bones, wrapped around their bodies, making it impossible for the 7 people of Haomen to retaliate. They could only try their best to operate their vital essence, trying to get rid of the strange green divine power. I've heard of the 5 elders of Haomen. Back then, you even defeated a godly state from the 3 sections. Venerable Qing Gu turned his head, the corners of his mouth curling into a mocking smile. However, don't you know that the godly state was the weakest among the 3 sects? Just because you defeated him, you think that you're strong enough, and you're so proud of yourself? The smile on Venerable Qing Gu's face widened once more. Should I say that you're naive or stupid? Supremacy, Qing Gu mocked. His gaze had never once landed on Haomen and the others. In his eyes, Haomen and the others were just ants. Since they were ants, why should he treat them seriously? This guy, how can he be so strong? Great Elder Haomen spurted out a mouthful of blood. He had used up half of his true origin to get rid of the green divine power. A single streak of divine power had used up half of Great Elder Haomen's true origin. What about more? This was because Supremacy Qing Gu did not take them seriously and did not even use his full strength. If he used his full strength, wouldn't he be able to kill them easily? Great Elder Haomen's face changed as he thought of this. He let out a mournful cry. Could it be that the heavens want to end my life, Haomen? It was not easy for him to get the protection of a state lord. In the end, it was going to be a terrifying catastrophe. Heaven's Expanse Saint Palace, suppress. At this moment, a shout was heard. Then, a huge Heaven's Expanse Saint Palace appeared above Supremacy Qing Gu's head. At the same time, the demonized Heaven's Expanse Saint Spirit appeared beside it and released streams of expanse energy. In the next moment, the Heaven's Expanse Saint Palace suppressed Supremacy Qing Gu. Interesting. Seeing this, Venerable Qing Gu's expression changed slightly. Then, he smirked and punched upward. Boom! Waves of divine power erupted, and in just an instant, the terrifying suppressive force on the Heaven's Expanse Saint Palace was broken. At the same time, waves of powerful divine power blasted towards the Heaven's Expanse Saint Palace. Die! At this moment, the demonized vast expanse Holy Spirit's white hair fluttered in the wind, and its blood-red eyes shone brightly. Streams of black demonic qi began to gather. In the next moment, it turned into a long spear and shot toward Supremacy Qing Gu. A futile struggle. Seeing this, the corners of Supremacy Qing Gu's mouth twitched as he sneered. Boom! All of a sudden, waves of godly realm aura erupted, and the demonic qi spear shattered instantly. At the same time, the falling Heaven's Expanse temple was forcefully stopped. The Heaven's Expanse Holy Spirit's face changed slightly. This move made her feel extremely uncomfortable. It is said that Haomen's ancestor, the Heaven's Expanse monarch, created an extremely powerful temple. Its power is terrifying, and it can suppress an entire level. Supremacy Qing Gu smiled slightly. Now, it seems like the Heaven's Expanse temple is only SOSO. You! Hearing this, the faces of Haomen's experts changed drastically. Their pupils constricted as they stared at Tianyang. However, a wave of godly realm aura swept over them, and the Haomen's experts spat out mouthfuls of blood again as they retreated. Crushing. Without any reasoning, he would crush you to death just by relying on the strength of his cultivation base. Supremacy Qing Gu sneered disdainfully as he looked at Haomen's group of 7 with a mocking gaze. Ants trying to shake a giant. Wasn't that ridiculous? However, at this moment, waves of devouring force suddenly erupted from behind Supremacy Qing Gu. In an instant, the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual energy, as well as the divine power that Venerable Qing Gu had just released, and even the entire mountain range and lake, all transformed into true essence that surged into Heavenly Sun's body. In just an instant, the aura of a peak holy emperor behind Supremacy Qing Gu exploded to the peak demigod realm. No, it did not stop even at the peak demigod realm. What's that? Supremacy Qing Gu's expression changed slightly as he hurriedly turned his head to look. Tianyang held the great void sword embryo in his hand as a cold glint flashed across his eyes. In the next moment, the aura of a peak demigod realm had surged to surpass that of a demigod realm. However, it was still a bit away from the true godly realm. His cultivation base had risen from the middle Holy Emperor realm to the peak Holy Emperor realm. How could the sky-devouring secret skill not improve? Although he had not stepped into the godly realm, it was much more powerful than the sky-devouring secret skill when he was only at the peak demigod realm. What the hell? Supremacy Qing Gu's expression changed slightly. In the next moment, a strange-looking wooden staff suddenly appeared in his hand, and he tapped it on the ground. The space seemed to ripple like water, and at the place where the wooden staff landed, ripples appeared. Following that, a green light screen rose from the surrounding space and surrounded the heavenly sun within. So what if you have all sorts of tricks up your sleeves and countless secret skills? Supremacy Qing Gu sneered. Supremacy Qing Gu was so confident in his own strength that he did not even want to take another look. It's a pity that the sect leader did not allow me to kill you immediately. Otherwise, you would have been buried in the Yellow Springs by now. Oh, is that so? However, a cold voice was heard from within the light screen. In the next moment, boom! A fist directly punched through the light screen and reached out from within. Then, he took a step forward. All the light screens were instantly shattered. Tianyang's body was surrounded by the 10 great origins. Terrifying auras were emitted from Tianyang's body. Heaven realm. Tianyang said softly. Then, layers of origin realms overlapped. The origin energy that erupted instantly covered the divine power boundary that Supremacy Qing Gu had released earlier. How dare a grain of rice emit brilliance? Supremacy Qing Gu immediately snorted when he saw Tianyang walk out from the light screen. Divine power erupted from his body. However, in the next moment, an arm shot out at lightning speed. At the same time, the Heaven Realm's power erupted and suppressed Supremacy Qing Gu, who had not expected this at all. Tianyang's hand also grabbed Supremacy Qing Gu's withered neck. Lin Fan moved his physical strength and lifted Venerable Qing Gu easily. Murderous intent was released from Tianyang's body. It was as if the surrounding space had frozen. Supremacy Qing Gu was also frantically releasing his divine power, trying to break free from Tianyang's hand. However, Tianyang's hand was like an iron clamp, clasping Supremacy Qing Gu's neck tightly. A voice that seemed to come from the depths of hell sounded. I was going to say that you should get lost if you don't want to die. Now, it's better for you to die. Then, the indestructible body and stellar sword body erupted at the same time. End of chapter. Chapter 1614. Boundless physical strength was exerted on Venerable Qing Gu's neck. Venerable Qing Gu's eyes popped out and his face turned pale. Although he was a godly state expert, his physical strength was not strong. Venerable Qing Gu was unable to move as if his life was being choked. Tianyang's grip made him feel as if his neck was going to be crushed by Tianyang. Boom! In the next moment, his neck was crushed. Tianyang's true origin automatically formed a thin film around his body, blocking all the blood outside. However, when he swung his right hand, some blood splattered out. Under Tianyang's overbearing grip, Venerable Qing Gu's neck was completely broken and his head was separated from his body. Damn it! Venerable Qing Gu roared as his head flew out. He controlled his body and charged toward Tianyang. However, in the next moment, Tianyang's fist landed on Venerable Qing Gu's body and sent him flying. He collided with the head. Bastard! Martial Highness Qing Gu let out a furious roar. Following it, a terrifying god force and the power of his god spirit burst out. How dare you attack me? Today you will die without a doubt. Thousand Feather Storm Formation. In an instant, the green divine power seemed to form feathers that covered the surrounding space. At the same time, the spiritual energy released a terrifying spiritual energy attack that shot toward Tianyang. Once the spiritual energy attack hit, there would be a pause of at least 3 seconds. These 3 seconds were enough for Venerable Qing Gu to condense countless divine power feathers and pierce through Tianyang's body. Boom! There was a loud explosion on the spiritual level. Venerable Qing Gu's lips curled into a ferocious smile. He controlled the countless divine power feathers and shot them toward Tianyang. However, Tianyang raised the great void sword embryo in his hand and slashed out. The arc-shaped sword light shot out in all directions. The countless divine power feathers collided with Tianyang's sword light and were easily neutralized. However, Venerable Qing Gu reacted quickly. He quickly gathered his divine power and formed a huge shield to block the attack. However, just as Venerable Qing Gu blocked the attack, a voice suddenly rang out. Waves of vast power rippled as Sky Sun's sword appeared in front of Venerable Qing Gu's head. Venerable Qing Gu's pupils contracted to the extreme. Stop right there. His divine power was released wildly, and his spiritual power was also trying its best to control the surrounding space, squeezing it toward the Great Void Sword embryo. He tried to force the Great Void Sword embryo to stop. Seeing this, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. Then, 2 different black flames suddenly burned on the Great Void Sword embryo, the true flames of destruction and the undying divine flame. After devouring Zhao Kongyan's 3 ninth-grade spiritual fires, the true flames of destruction had long entered the demigod realm. The immortal divine flame was a domineering divine flame that came with the immortal bloodline. When these two balls of flames were released at the same time, they instantly shattered the defense that Venerable Qin Gu had condensed. What? Venerable Qin Gu's pupils contracted to the extreme, and he tried to release a defensive martial technique to block it again. However, Tianyang's sword was faster than him. Before the divine power defense could be condensed, Venerable Qin Gu's head was cut off. However, the moment his head was cut off, a ray of light shot out from between his eyebrows and escaped into the distance. Although his head had been split in two, Venerable Qin Gu was still alive. Even if a godly state expert's physical body was destroyed thousands of times, it might not be able to hurt his foundation. Only when his spiritual power was destroyed would he be truly dead. Tianyang knew this very well. In a flash, he flew toward Venerable Qin Gu's spiritual power. Yang Tian, do you want to start a war between Haomen and the ancient Tao sect? Supremacy, Qin Gu roared as he fled. At the same time, his divine power burned, and his speed increased again. What does killing you have to do with the ancient Tao sect? Tianyang's expression did not change. He harumphed coldly and unleashed the full power of the ninth change. The distance between him and Venerable Qin Gu's spiritual power decreased again. I am an elder of the ancient Tao sect. My status is not much lower than the sect leaders. If you kill me, the ancient Tao sect will be furious. At that time, your puny Haomen won't be able to block a single attack from the ancient Tao sect. The ancient Tao sect can destroy a piece of trash like Haomen with a single breath. Venerable Qin Gu roared. His words were filled with a strong threat. At the same time, the speed at which he burned his divine power increased again. What does this have to do with me wanting to kill you? Tianyang's expression did not change. Using his physical strength as a foundation, he increased his speed again. At this moment, he was already a few million miles away from where Haomen was. Although Grand Elder Haomen and the others wanted to chase after him, when they left Haomen's territory, Grand Elder Haomen could no longer see Tianyang's figure. He could only look on helplessly. Right now, Tianyang was a sage emperor chasing after a deity. Yang Tian, do you really want to fight to the death with the ancient Tao sect? After leaving his physical body, the amount of divine power a single soul could carry was extremely limited. Although Venerable Qin Gu had only burned for a short while, his divine power had already been burned out. If he continued to chase, it would be Venerable Qin Gu's origin soul that was burned. Even if his physical body was gone and his divine power was burned out, it would not affect Venerable Qin Gu. In the ancient Tao sect, there were countless treasures and secret realms that could be used to heal injuries and recover true yuan. In just a few decades, everything that was consumed in this battle would be recovered. After a few decades, Haomen would also be destroyed. However, if he burned his origin soul, it would be a completely different story. 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years might not even be enough to recover a trace of what was burned out. I won't stop until you die. Tianyang's words were short, but the killing intent in them did not diminish at all. If Venerable Qin Gu managed to escape, the ancient Tao sect would definitely gather their strength and make a comeback in a few years. The protection of a realm lord might not be enough to stop them. If a tiger returned to the mountain, it would definitely cause trouble in the future. Of course, Tianyang wanted to kill Venerable Qin Gu. Other than these reasons, there was a more important reason. He had injured the heavens' expanse sacred spirit. He had angered Tianyang. Boom. Tianyang's speed increased again. Even the surrounding space collapsed under Tianyang's extreme speed. He was getting closer and closer to Venerable Qin Gu. Damn you! Venerable Qin Gu roared angrily when he saw this. He burned the last bit of his divine power to increase his speed. After that, Venerable Qin Gu realized something. This place is already within the territory of the ancient Tao sect. Venerable Qing Gu exclaimed in surprise. He had fled in the direction of the ancient Tao sect. Now, after such a long pursuit by Tianyang, he was already within the territory of the ancient Tao sect. If Yang Tian dared to attack here, it would be equivalent to declaring war on the ancient Tao sect. Ha ha! It seems like the heavens are not taking my life. The moment Venerable Qing Gu stopped, the great void sword embryo slashed down and cut his soul in half. What did you say? End of chapter. Chapter 1615. What did you say? Tianyang raised an eyebrow as he looked at Venerable Qing Gu's godly soul, which had been severed by the great void sword embryo. Why did this fellow suddenly stop to seek his death? Although his divine power had been exhausted, his godly soul was still intact. Could it be that this fellow was so stupid that he would rather throw away his life than burn his soul essence? Tianyang was confused as he looked at Venerable Qing Gu's godly soul, which had disappeared. Before the Prodigy Tournament, the Heavens Expanse Holy Spirit had searched for information about the three major sects for Tianyang. However, the information did not include the three major sects' sphere of influence. Firstly, Haomen had been in seclusion, and it was difficult to find something that could change at any time. Secondly, the Heavens Expanse Holy Spirit did not expect Tianyang to kill his way to Haomen's house as soon as he returned from the Prodigy Tournament. Forget it. If this fellow wants to die, so be it. I'll just take it that he's tired of living. Tianyang could not be bothered to think about things that he could not figure out. He shrugged and flew back. Tianyang was quite interested in the godly state expert's godly soul. However, Venerable Qing Gu's godly soul might have used some special means to dissipate quickly once he died. Tianyang did not even have time to leave behind a fragment of his godly soul. Venerable Qing Gu had died just like that. I remember that this fellow's head and body are still at the entrance of Haomen. I can't let that go to waste. Tianyang muttered to himself as he sped back. Haomen, above the giant lake. After chasing Tianyang to no avail, Great Elder Haomen and the other 6 Haomen experts returned to the giant lake at the entrance of Haomen. However, there was a sense of worry that could not be dispelled lingering on his brows. Tianyang's sect leader did not even think about it before he chased after them. Although they were extremely confident in Tianyang's strength, he was still a godly state expert from the ancient Tao sect. Compared to the one they had defeated back then, this one was much stronger. Tianyang and I can sense that his life force is very strong now. It's impossible for there to be any problems. There's no need to worry. The Heavens Expanse Saint Spirit closed its eyes and sensed for a moment. She did not know why, but Tianyang's face, which had been calm and emotionless before this, suddenly became extremely happy when he attacked her and the demonized vast expanse Holy Spirit in a fit of rage. Now that it sensed that Tianyang was not dead, and that he was still in peak condition, and might even have killed Supremacy Qing Gu and returned, the Heavens Expanse Saint Spirit was in high spirits. Of course, the last one was impossible. Hearing the Heavens Expanse Saint Spirit's words, Grand Elder Haomen and the others relaxed. Even the spirit of the temple had spoken. Could it be that there was someone in Haomen who was more trustworthy than the spirit of the temple? But I didn't expect Mr. Tianyang to actually make it into the top 50 and protect Haomen. Grand Elder Haomen sighed. It was all too surreal. Haomen was already in a precarious situation, and could collapse at any time. The only thing left was the Tianjiao Grand Competition, which they did not know if they could grasp onto. Now Tianyang had not only grasped this life-saving straw, but he had even turned this straw into a towering tree. As long as the people of Haomen were not stupid enough to let go of the great opportunity of being first in the Tianjiao Grand Competition, Haomen would definitely soar. However, before this, Tianyang was just a stranger from the Cloudfire territory. Other than the temple spirit, there was no way to tell if he was a friend or foe. Although he had defeated Jiang He, it would be extremely difficult for Jiang He to make it into the top 50 under normal circumstances, let alone when he was being attacked by the three sections. However, Tianyang won first place by stepping on the corpses of many disciples of the three sections. It can be said that the three sects hate Tianyang to the core. Second Elder Howman said worriedly. The protection of the territory master will last until the next Tianjiao Grand competition. Don't tell me you have no confidence in Howman led by the temple spirit? Before the heavens expanse Holy Spirit spoke, an elder chuckled. After 100 years of development, if there was still no genius who could make it into the top 50 of the Tianjiao Grand competition, then Howman might as well be destroyed. Although Tianyang could still participate in the Tianjiao Grand competition after 100 years, it was fine. Look, Tianyang is back. At this moment, Grand Elder Howman's sharp eyes immediately saw the black dot that was rapidly approaching. Hearing this, everyone immediately looked up and saw Tianyang's silhouette becoming clearer and clearer. Just when Tianyang was 1 mile away from them, the 7 elders of Howman knelt on one knee at the same time. Howman welcomes the return of the sect master. The momentum shook the heavens, and the huge lake below also set off waves. Tianyang was taken aback when he heard this, but he soon understood. He nodded slightly. Please rise. These 2 words officially announced the end of Howman's era of destruction. The beginning of a new era. In Howman. As early as 3 months ago, when Tianyang killed countless geniuses in the heaven realm, killed Xing Qingzi, and won first place in the Tianjiao Grand competition, this news had already spread throughout Howman. Therefore, when Tianyang returned to Howman, it also caused quite a stir. If it were not for the elders trying their best to maintain the situation, Howman would probably be completely wild now. Although it was not that far off. In Tianyang's residence. Although he was respected as the sect master of Howman, Tianyang still had no interest in managing Howman. He did not live in the sect master's residence, but chose an empty residence at random. At this moment, Tianyang was fiddling with the corpse of Venerable Qing Gu that he had just brought back. Since the spirit was dead, the corpse was naturally no longer a threat. However, the divine power contained in it had not dissipated much and was still very strong. Although Venerable Qing Gu did not specialize in physical strength and his physical strength was not even comparable to Tianyang's, it was still quite tough. Tianyang's pure inner Yuan sword strike was not able to cut him in half. Although the divine power has not dissipated, there is no way to directly absorb it. It seems that the Green Lotus Palace token has no interest in this divine power. Tianyang muttered to himself. If he could devour and absorb such a huge amount of divine power, Tianyang would have done so long ago. Unfortunately, the laws that Venerable Qing Gu cultivated were completely different from the corresponding laws of the 10 origins that Tianyang had mastered. Even if he devoured it, it would be useless and could only be used to replenish the chaos origin. Obviously, it would be a huge waste. However, the corpse of a godly state expert could not be casually thrown away. Putting everything else aside, it would not rot or deteriorate for millions of years. It would not be good to frighten the disciples of Howman. Oh, right! As he pondered, Tianyang's eyes suddenly lit up. He had thought of an excellent idea. In the next moment, numerous undying divine flames rose into the air. The corpse of a godly state expert, isn't that the best material for refining puppets? End of chapter. Chapter 16:16. Puppet. That was the best way Tianyang could think of to deal with Venerable Qing Gu. He couldn't eat it, but he couldn't waste it either. Devouring it would be too wasteful. Turning it into battle power was the most effective method. Tianyang smirked. In the next moment, the undying divine flame turned into rings of fire that surrounded Venerable Qing Gu's corpse. Tianyang then took out all the precious materials he'd taken out from Venerable Qing Gu's spatial treasure. With a wave of Tianyang's hand, the thousands of herbs scattered in all directions and floated in the air. The entire spatial treasure was filled with these herbs. Luckily, the undying imperial court is proficient in the art of puppetry. Otherwise, this corpse would have been wasted if I used the Tianshao Great World's puppetry technique. Tianyang chuckled. In his soul sea, Emperor Tsongwu's inheritance bloodline glowed. A huge amount of information flowed out from it. This was one of the many abilities that Tianyang had inherited from Emperor Tsongwu. It was a powerful puppet made with the undying divine flame, the Emperor Corpse puppet. The undying bloodline was born with the power of immortality. Even if the bloodline hadn't been awakened, the vitality would be extraordinary. If the bloodline was awakened, it would be closer to the realm of immortality as the cultivation of the undying bloodline deepened. Although this immortality was used on the physical body and the divine soul, its origin still came from the immortal bloodline. Of course, such a good thing couldn't be used only for himself. Therefore, the ancestors of the undying imperial court had controlled the undying bloodline to the extreme and fused it with the art of puppetry to create the Emperor Corpse puppet. It was also known as the undying divine puppet. If one cultivated it to the extreme, even the corpse of an emperor could be refined into a puppet. Furthermore, its combat power might be even stronger than when it was alive. Not to mention the vitality, when fused with the undying bloodline, it could be said to be half immortal. However, the materials required to make the Emperor Corpse puppet are extremely complicated. It's even more demanding for a dabbler like me. Tianyang smirked as he looked at Venerable Qing Gu's corpse floating in the air under the influence of the undying divine flame. If it wasn't for the rough stitches on the neck, one wouldn't be able to tell that this was a person who had been dead for many days. However, no wonder Venerable Qing Gu was an elder with a high status in the ancient Dao sect. He had several sets of rare and strange materials. Then I can fail a few times. Heavenly Sun chuckled as the ring of fire formed by the undying divine flame suddenly shrank, burning Venerable Qing Gu's body. At the same time, the herbs that Tianyang had just taken out from Venerable Qing Gu's space ring were all melted into the purest liquid by the immortal divine fire. Tarsal bone flower, star-plucking grass, solitary moon vine. There aren't many elixir formulas related to these herbs even in the inheritance of Emperor Lord Kangwu. Why did Supremacy Qing Gu make so many of them? Tianyang curled his lips and muttered to himself as he looked at the precious herbs that had completely turned into different colored liquids. No matter what Venerable Qing Gu's purpose was, it had now become Tianyang's. Then, he had to fuse it with Venerable Qing Gu's corpse. The feeling of using someone else's treasure to refine someone else's corpse into his own puppet was a little satisfying. Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly as his spirit power spread out. He became serious. Although Venerable Qing Gu's space ring was extremely abundant with materials, Tianyang didn't let his guard down. After stepping into the divine soul realm, Tianyang had never refined any elixirs and had always used his divine soul to fight. The power of his spirit had increased, but the precision of his control over his spirit power was much weaker. Refining pills required the most precision. Although refining a puppet couldn't be compared to refining pills, it was still better than using it to kill. After a while, Tianyang's undying divine flame had refined all the herbs into liquid-like essences. The method of refining an Emperor Corpse puppet was actually very simple. Refine the materials and use the undying divine flame to burn the corpse to a level where it could be easily modified. Then, fuse the refined materials into the body and finally inject the undying bloodline to activate it. Generally speaking, these were the steps. However, every step was a great challenge to the control of one's spirit. Tianyang closed his eyes slightly. Streams of spirit power were released in all directions with Tianyang as the center like water ripples. Then, the countless essences of herbs flew up instantly. Thousands of droplets of different colors burst out with a terrifying roar as if they were gathering clouds into a rain. Short ripples appeared in the surrounding space. They merely coexisted in the same space, but the energy interference between them had reached the point where it affected the entire space. This was because Tianyang had strengthened this space in advance. If he hadn't, the space would have begun to tear apart. 9 dragons rotating wheel, Tianyang shouted in a low voice. Then, the 9 fire dragons formed by the undying divine flame roared and suddenly flew up. The 9 fire dragons each swallowed 1/9 of the herbs and turned into a rotating wheel, spinning rapidly. Boom, 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 boom. Then, the 9 fire dragons exploded with undying divine flame at the same time. Tianyang's expression did not change. Previously, when the thousands of herbs' essences were separated by a large distance, the space fluctuated when they were in the same room. Now, they were all swallowed by the 9 dragons' rotating wheel. The distance was greatly reduced, and the repulsion between them was also greatly magnified. Refine. Tianyang snorted and the undying divine flame burned to the limit. At the same time, the demigod true destructive flames also joined the refining process. In an instant, the essences of the herbs inside the 9 fire dragons merged into one drop. 9 dragons combine. Tianyang shouted again. His spirit power moved rapidly and the 9 black fire dragons merged into one. Roar. With a roar, it rushed into Venerable Qing Gu's body. Boom! A loud sound was heard. The moment the 9 fire dragons merged, the essences of the herbs inside the fire dragons also began to riot. The repulsion between them was more than 100 times stronger than before. Tianyang's spirit power was also unable to withstand the repulsion for the first time. His face was red as he tried to resist the repulsion and forcefully merge them. His spirit power had been stimulated to the limit. However, the essences of the herbs could not merge together. Undying bloodline! At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Tianyang's mind. Tianyang's eyes lit up. He did not care about the source of the voice. He gritted his teeth and spat out a mouthful of blood essence that contained dense, undying force. It hit the center of the 9 fire dragons. Boom! The 9 fire dragons disappeared at this moment. The herbs also merged into one under the effect of this mouthful of blood essence. The domineering bloodline power forcefully merged the herbs. Refine! Tianyang shouted and the undying divine flame erupted to the limit. Venerable Qing Gu's body also released a devouring force at this moment and swallowed the essences of the herbs. Suddenly, a beam of light burst out from the heart of Venerable Qing Gu's body. It directly blasted the roof of Tianyang's mansion into nothingness and rushed to the sky. At the same time, wisps of terrifying auras burst out from the ground too. It was close to the God realm. End of chapter. Chapter 16-17. Boom. An unparalleled pillar of light shot up into the sky and blasted the roof of the residence into nothingness. Immediately after, the entire Howman Pocket world could see the pillar of light that shot into the sky. An aura that was infinitely close to the godly realm erupted from the pillar of light. Godly realm? Grand Elder Howman, who had just repelled Venerable Qing Gu, was in a state of tension. The moment he sensed the aura of a godly realm expert, his expression changed abruptly. There were no godly realm experts in Howman. Only Grand Elder Howman and Second Elder could release such an aura. However, even they couldn't release such a strong aura of the godly realm. Could it be that experts from the 3 major sects have infiltrated Howman? Grand Elder Howman's expression changed drastically at this thought. His figure flashed as he flew toward the pillar of light. Grand Elder Howman's expression changed again when he saw where the pillar of light was. His heart was in his mouth. That was the residence of Tianyang's sect master. Grand Elder Howman arrived in front of the pillar of light in an instant. At this moment, Tianyang's slightly disappointed voice rang out. He hasn't reached the godly realm yet? According to Tianyang's own guess, Venerable Qing Gu's strength was already stronger than the average godly realm expert. Moreover, His body didn't suffer any injuries other than his head being severed once. The main reason Tianyang could kill him so easily was that Venerable Qing Gu had underestimated his opponent too much. In addition, Tianyang's sudden outburst of strength had caught Venerable Qing Gu off guard. If Venerable Qing Gu had gone all out in a head-on clash, it was still unknown who would have won. This showed how strong Venerable Qing Gu was. Moreover, the Emperor Corpse puppet in Emperor Kangwu's inherited memories could be refined into a puppet that was even stronger than the original one. Now, not only had he not leveled up, but he had also been demoted. This greatly disappointed Tianyang. At the same time, Grand Elder Haoman looked at the body of Overlord Qing Gu that was releasing an energy that was close to the immortal state and heard Tianyang's sigh. He immediately opened his mouth. He could tell at a glance that Tianyang was refining a puppet. However, to refine a puppet, he actually wanted to refine a godly state expert. Even a deity realm powerhouse without any intelligence would still be a supreme being of the first realm. Even in the Lingfeng realm, they would be at the top of the pyramid. Now that Tianyang had refined a puppet that was even stronger than First Elder Haoman and Second Elder, he was still not satisfied? Why are you here? Tianyang turned his head and looked at the dumbfounded Grand Elder of Haomen. He raised his eyebrows and asked, I saw that the sect master's movements were too big, so, Great Elder Haoman said awkwardly. He thought that it was an invasion by the experts of the three sections. He didn't expect that it was caused by Tianyang himself. However, a peak holy emperor refining a godly state puppet. No one in the entire immortal realm would be able to do such a thing. That's fine. Tianyang waved his hand and gestured for Great Elder Haoman to leave. Then, he looked at Overlord Qing Gu's body that was absorbing the essence of the herbs. The essence of the herbs was mainly used to strengthen Overlord Qing Gu's physical body. It had nothing to do with his cultivation. However, if his cultivation was not high, no matter how strong his physical body was, it would not be comparable to a true godly state expert. Could it be that something went wrong? Tianyang frowned and pondered. Could it be that Overlord Qing Gu doesn't have a divine spirit? Great Elder Haoman couldn't help but ask when he saw this. When Overlord Qing Gu fought previously, he didn't rely on his physical body. Instead, he relied on his divine spirit and divine power. I see. Tianyang's eyes lit up when he heard this. Then, he reached out with his right hand. When Overlord Qing Gu's divine spirit was destroyed by Tianyang, Tianyang tried his best to keep a fragment of his divine spirit. He only has divine power but no divine spirit. Then, what can he use to control this body of divine power? Thank you. Tianyang laughed. Then, the power of his divine spirit exploded. He cleansed all the consciousness in this fragment of divine spirit. Then, he released a part of his divine spirit and injected it into this empty fragment of divine spirit. At this moment, Overlord Qing Gu's body emitted rays of light. This was the sign that the essence of the herbs was about to be completely absorbed and the puppet was about to take shape. It can't take shape like this, Tianyang shouted. Immortal fire, burn. The already weakened, undying divine flame erupted once again. However, under the burning of the overbearing immortal fire, Overlord Qing Gu's body began to be damaged. Originally, during the refining process, the strength of one's body would weaken greatly. Pitch-black skin fragments fell from Venerable Qing Gu's body. His entire body was in its weakest state. Keep. Tianyang's eyes narrowed. At this moment, he injected the divine spirit fragment into it. Open! Tianyang roared. The divine power in Overlord Qing Gu's body burst out instantly. It surged along Overlord Qing Gu's meridians. So, this is the cultivation technique that this guy cultivates. Looking at the meridians where the true origin energy was circulating, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. The ancient path sex cultivation technique was indeed not bad. However, now was not the time to be amazed by the cultivation technique. The dead skin that was constantly falling off also stopped. The body that had been burnt to a crisp by the undying divine fire also began to release rays of divine power. Seeing this, Tianyang's lips curled into a smile. Previously, no matter how he refined it, this divine power was like a pool of stagnant water that did not move at all. The reason why it could release an aura that was close to the godly state was probably because this body had endured countless scourges of divine power. Now, with the empty divine spirit fragment as a catalyst, this vast sea of divine power was finally mobilized. In an instant, it filled Overlord Qing Gu's entire body. Crack, crack. Suddenly, two strange noises were heard. Then, Tianyang saw that in the immortal fire, the hunched and short body was constantly expanding. The withered muscles were also constantly expanding. In just an instant, the hunched old man turned into a strong middle-aged man. This is... Great Elder Haomen's pupils contracted as he looked at this scene in disbelief. This Emperor Corpse puppet can transform the body into the most suitable state for battle. It is indeed true. Tianyang smiled in satisfaction. Then, he let out a low roar. Done. A drop of immortal blood flew out from Tianyang's fingertip. Then, it disappeared between Overlord Qing Gu's eyebrows. At this moment, the pillar of light that was emitting an aura close to the godly state suddenly disappeared. Then, boom! The pressure and aura of a true godly realm expert was born, and a light pillar several times the size of the previous one soared into the sky. Great Elder Haomen's mouth was wide open. He was completely shocked. In the immortal fire, the tightly shut eyes of the Emperor Corpse puppet suddenly opened and emitted a ray of golden light. Then, it stood up, bathed in flames, and knelt before Tianyang as it spoke in a sonorous voice. Corpse puppet greets Master. At the same time, the divine Tao law was completely released. End of chapter. Chapter 1618. Corpse puppet greets Master. Venerable Qing Gu's body stood up from the flames. His entire body was pitch black, and only his eyes had a tinge of gold. The muscles on his body were like boulders, huge and sturdy. A sonorous and powerful voice rang out. Tianyang immediately felt as if the surrounding space had been disturbed by the released divine Tao nomological laws. Not bad. Tianyang nodded slightly, while the corpse puppet remained kneeling there motionlessly. Since Tianyang had already erased all the contents of Venerable Qing Gu's fragment, the corpse puppet now had Venerable Qing Gu's body, but no memories of Venerable Qing Gu. Apart from some basic actions and battles, it basically knew nothing else. Of course, it was still proficient in cultivation techniques and martial technique. Get up. Tianyang chuckled. After confirming that he had absolute control over the Emperor Corpse puppet, Tianyang was relieved. Although the refined puppet still hadn't reached the level that Tianyang had imagined, it was still much stronger than Venerable Qing Gu. However, he had already surpassed Deng Zhangquan by quite a bit. If Tianyang returned to the Cloud Fire territory, a single puppet would be able to turn the Great Sun Sect, the overlord of the Cloud Fire territory, upside down. Yes. The corpse puppet stood up. Then, it remained motionless like a statue as it stood beside Tianyang. Great Elder Haomen was already dumbfounded. He even began to doubt his life. He had seen with his own eyes how Tianyang had violently sewn up Venerable Qing Gu's body and put it in an interspatial bag. What was going on with this 2-meter-tall, muscular, and majestic pitch-black man that had been refined? Even if he didn't release his divine Tao aura, just standing there was still an extremely oppressive force. Tianyang chuckled as he looked at Venerable Qing Gu, who was like an iron tower. Even if this fellow were to say that he was Supremacy Qing Gu, no one would believe him. However, this was also a good thing. If the ancient Tao sect found out that not only had he killed Sovereign Qing Gu, but he had also refined him into a puppet, they would probably use all of their power to destroy Haomen. They wouldn't even care about the protection of a realm lord. However, calling you corpse puppet is a bit too unsightly. I can't call you Venerable Qing Gu. Let's call you Gu Qing, Tianyang said with a smile. Hearing this, the tall corpse puppet once again knelt on one knee and said respectfully, "Thank you, Master, for granting me a name." Now Tianyang's subordinate finally had a deity realm combat strength. Tianyang smiled with satisfaction. Then, he instructed Great Elder Haoman to inform Haoman's Hall of Elders to not make a fuss. Otherwise, it would be considered light if Great Elder Haoman rushed over. An unfamiliar God-state expert had suddenly appeared in Haoman's small world. It was possible that the entire Haoman would be on alert. Okay. Great Elder Haoman nodded as if he was in a dream and left. He was still in a state of extreme shock. A God-state puppet that had sworn loyalty to a saint king, had actually been born right in front of his eyes? Suddenly, the Grand Elder of Haomen was filled with pride. However, he did not dare to forget Tianyang's order. Once he left, he quickly called for a meeting with all the elders. If things went as expected, Gu Qing would very likely become the guardian of Haomen in the future. How to deal with him was a topic that had to be discussed. Just as Great Elder Haoman gathered all the elders with a solemn expression, Tianyang brought Gu Qing and quickly arrived at the center of Haomen, where the sacrificial grounds were. Before this, Tianyang had already been here. After beating up Great Elder Haoman and Second Elder, he discovered the strangeness of the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's statue. "Greetings, leader." Although the sacrificial grounds were no longer used after Great Elder Haoman and Second Elder were awakened by Tianyang, there were still disciples who were in charge of cleaning this place. After all, the Heaven's Expanse Emperor was not only Haoman's ancestor, but also Haoman's god. Moreover, even the two Heaven's Expanse Saint Spirits couldn't confirm whether the Heaven's Expanse Emperor was dead or alive. This made the Haoman elders even more excited. They hoped that one day, the Heaven's Expanse Emperor would return and lead Haoman to the top again. "I have something to do here. You can leave first." Looking at the flustered Haoman disciple, Tianyang waved his hand and laughed lightly before walking in. Hearing this, the Haoman disciple was stunned. He quickly retreated, surprised that Tianyang didn't put on any airs. Seeing this, Tianyang smiled. Although this disciple might be about the same age as Tianyang, the way he spoke made it seem as if Tianyang was an old monster who was thousands or tens of thousands of years old. Soon, Tianyang arrived at the center of the sacrificial grounds, where the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's statue was. The last time he saw this statue, it was shrouded in the light of countless shattered treasures. It looked extraordinarily majestic, but Tianyang knew that it was just a facade. Now, without the light of so many shattered treasures, the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's statue looked like an ordinary stone. However, Tianyang knew that it looked ordinary. It might look ordinary, but if he really wanted to do something to the Heaven's Expanse Emperor statue, then the power that was contained within the statue would definitely make Tianyang suffer the consequences. However, compared to the undying Heavenly Lord's statue in the ruins of God, it's still a little lacking. What's the difference? Tianyang couldn't help but mutter to himself. They were both statues. Although the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's statue in front of him was incomparably mysterious, it was still much weaker than the undying Heavenly Lord's statue that taught Tianyang the three styles of indestructible. In terms of relationship, the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's statue and the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's relationship was definitely much stronger than the undying Heavenly Lord's statue in the ruins of God. However, in Tianyang's knowledge, the Heaven's Expanse Emperor was already the strongest existence. Other than what Jiang Xian had said, the strongest ones he had come into contact with were the Heaven's Expanse Emperor and the Heaven's Expanse Emperor. If the undying Heavenly Lord was stronger than the Heaven's Expanse Emperor, what realm would he be in? The undying Imperial Court is still very strong. Tianyang took a deep breath and sighed. He then regained his senses and looked at the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's statue in front of him. Then, the Heaven's Expanse Saint Spirit appeared beside him. According to Haumann's records, the secret of the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's statue seems to be unknown to the people of Haumann. They only believe that the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's statue can't be changed, but they don't know the reason. The Heaven's Expanse Saint Spirit said. Before the demonization, the Heaven's Expanse Saint Spirit might have known something, but it shouldn't be much. In other words, Haumann knew that he might have the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's inheritance, but they didn't know where it was. Needless to say, the three sections. Only they knew where the Heaven's Expanse Emperor was. Then, Tianyang raised his head and smiled. The Heaven's Expanse Origin appeared. End of chapter. Chapter 16-19. The Inheritance of the Vast Expanse Emperor. Rays of vast expanse origin were released from Tianyang's body. At the same time, a shadow of the vast expanse holy palace appeared behind Tianyang. Suddenly, the eyes of the vast expanse emperor's statue in front of him shone with a strange light. Looks like although that guy's memory is incomplete, it can still be used. Seeing this, the vast expanse Holy Spirit smiled and said, when he devoured the vast expanse Holy Spirit in the ruins of God, she had some memories about the inheritance of the vast expanse emperor. However, at that time, Tianyang had not come to the godly realm yet. The vast expanse Holy Spirit did not know about the existence of the vast expanse emperor's statue and did not know what those memories meant. Now was the right time to use it. Seeing this, Tianyang calmed down. The vast expanse origin continued to release rays of light. The vast expanse origin contained a vast amount of vast expanse energy, and they were slowly injected into the statue. The light released from the statue's eyes became brighter and brighter. Even the light from Tianyang's vast expanse origin could not overshadow the two rays of Shunguang. Rumble! The entire place of worship began to tremble. The vast expanse energy that was converted from the spiritual energy of the entire Haumann small world began to surge wildly. Then, it formed an extremely complicated and mysterious path that surged into the body of the vast expanse emperor statue. What is the leader doing in the place of worship? Outside, the Haumann disciple who was in charge of cleaning the place of worship also noticed the commotion. His expression changed slightly as he looked into the place of worship. However, in the next moment, the Haumann disciple suddenly felt that the surrounding vast expanse energy had become much denser. Suddenly, the Haumann disciple felt as if all the pores on his body were about to open up. It was as if he was soaking in a hot spring. It was extremely comfortable. However, in the next moment, in the sacrificial ground, a brilliant beam of light was emitted from the vast expanse monarch's statue. The light pillar was extremely small at first. It was only as thick as a finger. However, in just a few seconds it suddenly expanded. It turned into a gigantic light pillar that covered the entire vast expanse emperor statue. Waves of emperor's aura exploded from it. The Haumann disciple only experienced the comfortable feeling for a moment before he was interrupted by the emperor's aura. However, even though the oppressive aura had reached the level of an emperor, this disciple of the house sect did not feel any pressure at all. It was as if a breeze had blown by, blowing this disciple of the house sect effortlessly. However, the disciples of Haumann also seemed to have been inspired by something and knelt down on one knee. This is the descent of the vast expanse emperor's divine aura. The disciple's heart was in his heart, and was in front of his eyes expanse of light. However, he did not dare to act rashly. Instead, he immediately sent out a message to let the others know that the heavens expanse emperor had descended once again. Other than that, he did not dang ong s. After all, no one knew when the vast expanse emperor's spirit would disappear. If he interfered with the vast expanse emperor's spirit this time, then he would really be a sinner of Haumann. However, Tianyang faction leader is indeed the faction leader of Tianyang. God knows how long it has been since the ancestral vision appeared in this place of worship. The moment faction leader of Tianyang entered, the vast expanse emperor's spirit appeared. The disciple of Haomen said excitedly. At this moment, the great elder of Haomen, who was far away in the elder hall, also felt the aura. He immediately stood up and looked into the distance. The other elders of Haomen did the same. They all looked at the light pillar in the distance with a solemn expression. That place is the place of worship, the great elder of Haomen said. This time, he did not doubt it at all. This time, it was definitely the faction leader of Tianyang who caused the vast expanse emperor's spirit to appear. It was impossible for the other three sects. The thousands of disciples in Haomen stopped what they were doing and looked at the light pillar in the distance solemnly. Then, they knelt down on one knee. Just as the vast expanse emperor's aura erupted and shook the entire Haomen. Tianyang stood in front of the vast expanse emperor's statue and looked at the scene in front of him. Although Tianyang could feel the pressure, he could only feel it. He couldn't even feel a gentle breeze caressing his face. In his soul sea, the drop of emperor blood from Emperor Tsangwu glowed faintly and easily blocked the aura of the vast expanse emperor. They were both emperors, but there was still a difference in strength between them. Emperor Tsangwu was once the leader of the undead Emperor Palace. He was already half a step away from the Emperor realm and had touched upon the existence above the Emperor realm. It was natural for him to be stronger than the vast expanse Emperor. Even if it was just a drop of Emperor blood, it would not allow the weak to violate it. At this moment, a strange and powerful fluctuation was slowly released from the vast expanse Emperor's statue. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes narrowed as he looked in front of him. The pillar of light that erupted from the vast expanse Emperor's statue slowly dissipated. However, the surrounding vast expanse Emperor's power did not show any signs of weakening. Instead, it became even stronger. This is, the pillar of light gradually dimmed. However, the vast expanse Emperor's power that had gathered released an even brighter light. Gradually, it formed the shape of a huge door. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound was heard. Tianyang's Wanxiang sky ruins opened by itself, and the vast expanse Saint Palace flew out from it. What's going on? Seeing this, the vast expanse Saint Spirit was stunned. He did not summon it. At this moment, the vast expanse Saint Palace that had suddenly appeared rose rapidly and then fell down. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. At this moment, the vast expanse Emperor's power completely exploded. Rays of light gathered in front of the door of the vast expanse Saint Palace, forming a huge door that was completely formed by the vast expanse Emperor's power. As for the vast expanse Emperor's statue, it happened to be 90 feet in front of the huge door that was formed. The vast expanse Emperor's power behind it shone brightly, causing the ordinary-looking statue to look as if the real vast expanse Emperor had descended. It's not just the vast expanse origin. This vast expanse Saint Palace is the key to opening the inheritance? Seeing this, Tianyang said in surprise. No, the vast expanse origin and the vast expanse Saint Palace are just a catalyst. At this moment, the vast expanse Saint Spirit seemed to have a new memory as he spoke slowly. Then, he stretched out his hand, and an extremely pure vast expanse Emperor's power erupted from it. It turned into a pillar of light and hit the center of the huge door. The vast expanse Saint Spirit is the key to opening the vast expanse door. Boom! The huge door shone brightly, and a violent vast expanse Emperor's power erupted from it. The Emperor's aura was also unleashed to its limit. At this moment, the vast expanse Emperor's power in Haomen's small world became extremely dense. From an ordinary small world, it became a supreme cultivation sanctuary. Tianyang's pupils contracted slightly. Then, the huge door slowly opened. Vast expanse door, open. End of chapter. Chapter 1620. Vast expanse door, open. At the same time, streams of vast expanse power gushed out from within. Instantly, Tianyang understood why the demonized vast expanse Holy Spirit was still a normal vast expanse Holy Spirit before she was demonized. Perhaps it was because she was in the God world that she had the most memories among all the vast expanse Holy Spirit. Even so, she still did not know how to open the vast expanse Emperor legacy. That was because the vast expanse door not only required the vast expanse temple and the vast expanse Holy Spirit, but it also required the vast expanse temple and the weapon spirits of the vast expanse temple. However, boom. At that moment, a loud sound rang out. The vast expanse door that had just opened released a large amount of vast expanse power, and then closed again. At a speed that was much faster than when it was opened, it quickly dimmed, disappeared, and returned to the vast expanse Emperor statue. If not for the fact that the vast expanse temple that was summoned by the vast expanse Emperor statue was still behind, Tianyang would have thought that the opening of the vast expanse door was just an illusion. Looks like without the complete vast expanse temple, there's still no way to open the vast expanse Emperor legacy. Tianyang laughed bitterly and said. Hearing that, the vast expanse Holy Spirit could only remain silent and keep the vast expanse temple. He had subdued Haoman, and then caused a ruckus in the Genius tournament. Later on, he had even killed Honorable Chingu to make a puppet, all so that he could open the vast expanse Emperor legacy. In the end, he had opened it, but he did not let Tianyang in. However, now that I've already collected 3 fragments, I think it won't be long before I can gather the vast expanse temple. At that time, I should have reached the level of a demigod, and it should be easier to deal with the vast expanse Emperor legacy. Tianyang laughed softly and said. He was not discouraged by the failure this time. On the other hand, the vast expanse Holy Spirit lowered her head and said nothing. Obviously, the failure this time was quite a big blow to her. Bang! All of a sudden, a soft sound rang out. Tianyang raised his head and saw that the eyes of the heavens expanse Emperor statue, which had returned to silence, suddenly emitted a beam of light. Tianyang subconsciously caught it. However, before the light landed in Tianyang's hands, it suddenly turned and ran towards the heavens expanse Saint Spirit. Then, it merged into the heavens expanse Saint Spirit's body. What is it? Seeing that, Tianyang's heart skipped a beat. If something were to happen to the heavens expanse Saint Spirit, that would be bad. The vast expanse Holy Spirit closed his eyes and sensed carefully. Then, he raised his head and his eyes brightened. It's the location of the other heavens expanse temple. This heavens expanse Emperor statue has the ability to communicate with the heavens expanse shrine. Now that I have this ability, I can search for other heavens expanse saint palaces. The heavens expanse Saint Spirit said excitedly. Hearing that, Tianyang was stunned for a moment before he was overjoyed. Does that mean that I can head straight for the heavens expanse saint palaces and search for them? I don't have to try my luck everywhere. Tianyang laughed. Hearing that, the heavens expanse Saint Spirit nodded heavily. Indeed. However, the range of detection isn't very large. Right now, it only includes the Lingfeng realm. The heavens expanse Saint Spirit sensed again and said. Hearing that, Tianyang was stunned. Only one realm? However, in the next moment, Tianyang suddenly realized what it meant by only one realm. This was not a realm in the Tianshao Great World, nor was it a prefecture in the Xiantian Great World. This was one of the 10,000 realms in the Divine Realm. This Lingfeng realm was probably 3 times the size of the Xiantian Great World. Sensing 3 great worlds at once, and this sensing range was still small? Moreover, it seems like there are other heavens expanse saint palaces in the Lingfeng realm. The heavens expanse Saint Spirit suddenly said. Hearing that, Tianyang's pupils shrank. It's in the Tsangshuan demon sect. The ancient Dao sect. The main sect of the ancient Dao sect was located in the southern part of the Lingfeng realm, on a mountain range with the densest heaven and earth spirit qi. In addition, the ancient Tao sect had set up a huge spirit-gathering formation, causing the heaven and earth spirit qi in the ancient Tao sect. If they had not used some method to change the nature of the heaven and earth spirit qi, the entire mountain range of the ancient Tao sect would have turned into a misty mountain range. At the main peak of the ancient Tao sect, in the Elder Hall, another soul lamp of the ancient Tao sect has been extinguished. The leader spoke slowly. His voice was so heavy that it seemed to be able to crush the entire Elder Hall. Hearing that, everyone fell silent. They had known for a long time. Sovereign Qing Gu, who had taken the initiative to attack and then waited outside Haomen for 3 months, was dead. His physical body was nowhere to be found, but one thing was certain: his spirit had been destroyed long ago. Otherwise, his soul lamp would not have been extinguished so thoroughly, without leaving behind even a spark of hope. Now we've found a new piece of information. The leader spoke again. The location of Sovereign Qing Gu's death is extremely far from Haomen. It's already out of Haomen's sphere of influence. In other words, it's within our ancient Tao sect's sphere of influence. What? Hearing that, the ancient Tao sect's elders were all shocked. They weren't too surprised that Venerable Qing Gu had died. Rather, it would be better to say that their surprise had already been diluted by the passage of many days. However, this news was like a bomb that exploded in the ancient Tao sect's Elder Hall. They killed someone from the ancient Tao sect in our territory? The expressions of some of the ancient Tao sect's elders instantly became extremely grave as they stared at the map that the leader had opened. On the map was the ancient Tao sect's sphere of influence. At the edge of their sphere of influence, or rather, within several thousand miles from the edge, was where Sovereign Qing Gu had died. Several thousand miles was perhaps only the blink of an eye for a powerhouse, especially someone like Sovereign Qing Gu, who might have been the last to be killed. However, this was not the reason why Tianyang dared to kill Sovereign Qing Gu after entering the ancient Tao sect's sphere of influence. Insolent brat, you've gone too far. Immediately, a powerhouse slammed the table and roared angrily. This was no different from directly slapping them in the face. Die. Our ancient Tao sect's dignity will not be violated. Immediately, a warlike powerhouse roared as his eyes burned with heavy killing intent. In the battle against Haomen, they had already lost because of Tianyang. Then, in the Prodigy tournament, their number 1 prodigy had been killed. Now, even the number 1 prodigy's master had been killed in their own territory? Did they really think that the protection of the realm master was invincible? However, the leader's cold voice sounded, "Wait a moment. Yang Tian definitely did not have the strength to kill Sovereign Qing Gu, and neither did Haomen. In other words, there is a powerful force behind Yang Tian, a mysterious but incomparably powerful force. Now that he has the protection of the Realm Master, we cannot act openly. We must kill him, but this matter needs to be considered at length." Just like that, the ancient Tao sect's killing intent towards Tianyang rose to the highest point. Just as the ancient Tao sect was discussing their intention to kill him, Tianyang had already arrived in front of the Tsangshuan demon sect by himself. He coughed twice to moisten his throat and then shouted, "Tsangshuan demon sect. Haomen Yang Tian, you've come to visit." End of chapter. Chapter 1621. Haomen Yang Tian is here as a guest. Tianyang roared. The entire Tsangshuan demon sect was immediately thrown into chaos. Tianyang's roar wasn't just a simple sound wave. It also contained spirit power. The entire Tsangshuan devil sect was thrown into chaos by this roar. Who dares to offend my Tsangshuan demon sect? Suddenly, a loud roar came from the mountain gate. Then, a tall and strong man rushed out. His upper body was bare, revealing his swollen muscles. His face was filled with an ominous aura as streams of black origin energy circulated around his body. The aura emitted from his body had already reached the peak half-saint emperor level. Haomen Yang Tian? The middle-aged man's face darkened when he heard Tianyang's roar. Haomen Yang Tian's name was known to everyone in the Lingfeng stage who knew about the Prodigy tournament. He defeated Ji Mingkai, defeated Li Xuanzang and killed Xing Qingzi. Other than Tian Yuanzi, who didn't make a move, the rest were all beaten up by Tianyang. How could the burly man not know about such an existence that could be called a Heaven's Pride killer? The burly man's face immediately turned extremely grave. However, he still didn't allow Tianyang to enter easily. Even if it's Haomen Yang Tian, don't even think about entering my Zhongshuan demon sect. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you're the champion of the Prodigy tournament and have the protection of a territory master. The burly man from the Zhongshuan demon sect said unyieldingly. However, he was also a little afraid. If Tianyang killed him in a fit of anger, he wouldn't be able to say anything. Do whatever I want? Tianyang raised his brows. It seemed that the news of him killing Sovereign Qing Gu hadn't spread yet. That made sense. Besides Haomen and the ancient Taoist sect, no one else knew that Tianyang had killed Sovereign Qing Gu. The ancient Taoist sect covered it up and Haomen didn't say anything, so it was normal that the Zhongshuan demon sect didn't know. After all, even if the ancient Taoist sect's head had been kicked by a donkey, there was no way they would reveal that their deity realm elder had been killed. I've already said that I'm here as a guest, Tianyang said with a smile. Although Tianyang had every reason to kill the Zhongshuan demon sect, Tianyang did not dare to start a fight before he had the strength to do so. However, for the Heaven's Expanse Shrine fragment and the other Heaven's Expanse Shrine, Tianyang would not let the Zhongshuan demon sect off so easily. It was even possible that the reason the Zhongshuan demon sect was so determined to hunt down Haomen was because they had learned some secrets about the Heaven's Expanse Emperor's inheritance from the Heaven's Expanse Sacred Hall. Since that was the case, all the more he couldn't let them continue to live. Guest. The burly man frowned when he heard this. He was about to reply when another powerful aura erupted from behind him. Then, an icy cold aura came from behind him. It was bone-chilling. Although it was only an aura, it felt like it was going to freeze the burly man. It's the fifth elder. The burly man was certain. The fifth elder was a powerful deity who had been famous for a long time. Although he wasn't very strong, he was still a deity. With such a deity here, no matter how arrogant Haomen Yang Tian was, he wouldn't dare to act rashly. Haomen Yang Tian? In the next moment, a ray of light appeared between Tianyang and the burly man. When the light dissipated, a black-haired, black-clothed figure was revealed. He was tall and thin, and his face was old but had very little muscle. He looked a little eerie and terrifying. The deity realm aura that almost froze people had come from this person. While Tianyang was sizing up the tall and thin elder, the tall and thin elder was also sizing up Tianyang. It was hard to connect this young man, who looked to be in his 20s and had a bright smile on his face, to Yang Tian, who had defeated Li Xuanzang and killed Xing Qingzi. However, he was exactly the same as in the portrait. Yang Tian, champion of the Prodigy tournament. With the Territory Lord's protection, I don't dare to kill you. The tall and thin elder said coldly. However, if you continue to act rashly in front of my Zhongshuan demon sect, don't blame me for being merciless. This place is already deep within my Zhongshuan demon sect's territory. I believe that the Territory Lord will not interfere too much. If I attack, you will die, and Haomen, whom you worked so hard to protect, will also be destroyed. The Zhongshuan demon sect's fifth elder said coldly. Tianyang raised his brows. It seemed that the Zhongshuan demon sect's fifth elder was quite confident in his own strength. However, Tianyang only smiled faintly. He stared straight at the Zhongshuan demon sect's fifth elder without any intention of backing down. Yang Tian, this is the last bit of face that my Zhongshuan demon sect can give the Territory Lord. If you continue to be stubborn, don't blame my Zhongshuan demon sect for being unscrupulous. The Tsangshuan demon sect's fifth elder's face darkened when he saw that Tianyang didn't move and even had a smile on his face. No matter what, the Tsangshuan demon sect was still a demon sect. He was also an elder of a demon sect. Yang Tian didn't care about the Tsangshuan demon sect at all. He had long been unable to suppress the killing intent in his heart. "I've already said that I'm here as a guest." Tianyang chuckled. "Is this how your Tsangshuan demon sect treats its guests? You're courting death." The Tsangshuan demon sect's fifth elder immediately exploded. With a low roar, godly qi gushed out from his body. Tianyang was able to tell in an instant. The Tsangshuan demon sect's fifth elder was weaker than sovereign Qing Gu. However, it seemed that the Tsangshuan demon sect's fifth elder wasn't as careless as sovereign Qing Gu, allowing Tianyang to easily find an opening and kill him. If Tianyang were to deal with him himself, he might be able to win, but it definitely wouldn't be easy. But now, Tianyang didn't need to do it himself. "Gu Qing," Tianyang said indifferently. In the next instant, a burly man with pitch-black skin charged out from the side. "Yes." Gu Qing's expression didn't change as he looked at the incoming Tsangshuan demon sect's fifth elder. "Don't kill him." Tianyang chuckled. Gu Qing nodded. "Understood." In the next instant, godly qi erupted from Gu Qing's body and charged towards the Tsangshuan demon sect's fifth elder. Tianyang was quite confident in Gu Qing's battle strength. Although the refinement was a success, there were too many coincidences that caused Gu Qing's strength to not surpass his original body like a perfect emperor corpse puppet. However, he was almost at sovereign Qing Gu's level when he was alive. It wouldn't be a problem to deal with the Tsangshuan demon sect's fifth elder. A godly qi expert protecting you? Is this what you're relying on, Yang Tian? I knew that a faction like Haomen wouldn't be able to nurture a heaven pride like you. However, you found the wrong person to behave so atrociously in the Tsangshuan demon sect. The Tsangshuan demon sect's fifth elder roared as his icy qi surged. Gu Qing's figure flashed as he arrived in front of the Tsangshuan demon sect's fifth elder at a terrifying speed. Boom! A punch landed on the fifth elder's face and sent him flying. Merry Christmas! End of chapter. Chapter 1622. Bang! The sound of a heavy collision exploded from the fifth elder's face. Blood spurted from his mouth as he was sent flying. Fortunately, the fifth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect had dispersed all the qi he had prepared to use to attack Heavenly Sun the moment Gu Qing's punch landed on his face. Otherwise, the punch coupled with the backlash from his origin energy would have definitely injured the fifth elder of the Tsangshuan devil sect. Fifth elder? The burly man who was prepared to watch the fifth elder show off his might was dumbfounded. What was going on? The fifth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect, who was just about to kill Yang Tian, who had dared to offend the Tsangshuan demon sect, was sent flying with a single punch by this burly man who had popped out of nowhere? Although the fifth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect might not necessarily suffer any serious injuries from this punch, the aura he had accumulated earlier had completely disappeared. What a powerful physical body! The fifth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect also quickly adjusted his posture. Only a slight trace of anger flashed across his eyes, but he remained calm throughout. His expression darkened slightly as he looked at Gu Qing, who was still in his punching posture. Could he be a god stage body refinement expert? The Tsangshuan demon sect did not dare to say that Gu Qing had achieved god stage body refinement. After all, it was extremely difficult to achieve saint stage body refinement even in the god stage, let alone god stage body refinement. However, it was true that Gu Qing's physical body had already surpassed his. Gu Qing did not move at all, as if he had not heard the fifth elder's words. It seems that the faction behind Yang Tian does not care about the Tsangshuan demon sect at all. Upon seeing this, the fifth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect's bony face immediately flashed with an icy look. In the next instant, Streams of icy inner yuan were released. The surrounding laws began to tremble. But don't think that a God stage practitioner can behave atrociously in the Zhongshuan demon sect. Law of Ice, heart-piercing sword. The fifth elder roared as streams of divine power and laws intertwined, fused, and rapidly condensed in his hand. Then, the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect disappeared from the spot. Who would have thought that it would be the legendary heart-piercing sword? Yang Tian has angered the fifth elder. Even a God stage expert can forget about doing anything to him. Seeing this, the brawny man's eyes lit up and he revealed a look of surprise. The divine law of the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect was a little stronger than the law of ice. It carried a terrifying penetrating force. The fifth elder himself had used the penetrating power to fuse with his own sword cultivation to create an attack that could bring out the full strength of the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect. Boom! Gu Qing made his move. His feet stomped on the ground, shattering the ground within 1,000 feet radius as he charged towards the Zhongshuan demon sect's fifth elder at a terrifying speed. He's not using divine power? The fifth elder of the Zhongshuan devil sect was furious when he sensed that there was not the slightest fluctuation of divine power circulating from Gu Qing's body. Do you really think that I'm so easy to bully? Sky Demon Sword. The fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect roared as streams of black divine power gathered on the sword. There were even streams of demonic aura lingering on the sword of laws. In the next instant, the Zhongshuan demon sect's fifth elder roared and slashed out with his sword. A pitch-black sword light that contained terrifying freezing power shot out. Die. A battle between God stage experts without using divine power? He didn't even use his divine Tao laws once. He simply looked down on the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect from the bottom of his heart. Gu Qing remained expressionless as he stared at the pitch-black sky demon sword and roared. He punched out. However, although Gu Qing was stronger than the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan devil sect, that was only because he had used his divine power. It was impossible for him to block the fifth elder's sword with a simple punch. Bang! Not only did Gu Qing's punch not have much effect, he was even sent flying by the sky demon sword. He's not dead? The fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect was stunned. Gu Qing didn't use his divine power and took his sky demon sword head-on, but he was only sent flying? How strong was this guy's physical body? Boom! However, there was a loud explosion. The fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect subconsciously dodged to the side as a cannonball-like body ruthlessly brushed past him. The pupils of the Zhongshuan devil sect's fifth elder rapidly shrank. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva. What was that just now? At this moment, rays of blue godly power burst out from behind. The entire sky was dyed a dark green color. Then, Gu Qing shot out again. Divine power? The fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect finally reacted. His expression changed drastically as he swung his sword of laws with all his might. However, he was still sent flying by Gu Qing's punch, which contained divine power. As if he didn't know what fatigue was, Gu Qing kicked off the ground and flew towards the Zhongshuan devil sect's fifth elder the moment he sent him flying with a punch. Boom 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 boom. Divine Tao laws filled the sky as they clashed. But the green divine power firmly suppressed the black divine power of the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan devil sect. Immediately after, a series of extremely terrifying fist forces were released in the air. Bang! 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 Every time Gu Qing swung his fist, a circular ring of light would appear in the air. It was as if the air had turned into a leather drum, allowing Gu Qing to beat it as he wished. There was only divine power and no martial skills. The fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect was completely powerless against such a crude and unrestrained attack. He could only desperately circulate his inner yuan to block. However, from the looks of it, Gu Qing still had the absolute upper hand. Below, the peak half-saint emperor in charge of guarding the door was completely dumbfounded. Looking at Gu Qing, who was dragging the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect like a punching bag, he began to doubt his life. "Stop looking, he won't die." Tianyang chuckled. Tianyang was well aware of Gu Qing's strength. It was not difficult to defeat the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect, but it was basically impossible to kill him. Gu Qing only had the emperor corpse puppet and the terrifying physical body given to him by countless rare materials, as well as the divine power from venerable Qing Gu. He knew nothing else. The blank spirit that Tianyang had injected could only make Gu Qing erupt with divine power in anger. If he wanted to release martial skills without being controlled by Tianyang, he still needed time to grow. However, Tianyang was already quite satisfied with Gu Qing's current strength. "Gu Qing, come back." Tianyang waved his hand and Gu Qing, who was beating the fifth elder, instantly stopped everything he was doing and returned to Tianyang's side as quickly as possible. The fifth elder, who had finally escaped from the beating, was panting heavily at this moment. Tianyang smiled faintly. "Can I be your guest now?" End of chapter. Chapter 1623. "Now, can I be your guest?" Tianyang smiled faintly as he looked at the Zhongshuan demon sect's fifth elder, who had been beaten into a sorry state by Gu Qing. Upon hearing this, both the burly gatekeeper and the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan devil sect fell silent. In the martial world, the strong were respected and the fist was the biggest. As a disciple of the Zhongshuan demon sect, the fifth elder worshipped this even more. Now that he had been beaten up by this mysterious expert called Gu Qing, if he did not lower his head, it would go against the fifth elder's outlook on life. Moreover, regardless of whether it went against his principles, he could not defeat Gu Qing. Being unable to defeat Gu Qing was equivalent to being unable to defeat Tianyang. The fifth elder's face was filled with fear as he looked at Gu Qing, who was standing beside Tianyang like a loyal guard. "I can, but you should know that the Zhongshuan demon sect does not only have me. There are 4 existences above me that are stronger than me. The same goes for the sect master. He only needs 1 finger to crush you," the fifth elder said coldly. Although he had been defeated, he was still extremely confident in the Zhongshuan demon sect's strength. "I am only here as a guest." In the face of such an obvious threat from the Zhongshuan demon sect, Tianyang smiled and said. However, the Zhongshuan devil sect's fifth elder merely snorted in disdain, before he left in a flash. The burly half-saint emperor was left standing on the spot, not knowing what to do. Where is the person in charge? Tianyang could not be bothered to be polite with the burly man and curled his lips as he asked. Hearing this, the burly man understood his current situation. If he did not follow, he would die. "I will bring you to the Elder Hall." Haoman Yang Tian came to the Zhongshuan demon sect for no reason and even brought a god stage expert with him? The fourth elder frowned as he looked at the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan devil sect, who was in an extremely sorry state even though he was not injured. The Zhongshuan demon sect had not caused any trouble for Haoman recently because of the heaven-chosen grand tournament. Did Yang Tian really think that he, Haoman, would be able to settle scores with the Zhongshuan devil sect after the Heaven Pride tournament? "Alright, I'll go meet him." The fourth elder smiled disdainfully and walked out of the elder's hall. Yang Tian's strength is not worth mentioning, but the person guarding him is extremely mysterious. He didn't even use any battle techniques to deal with me. He was able to suppress me with just his divine energy. The fifth elder of the Zhongshuan devil sect recalled and added. He didn't use any martial skills? That's fine. However, my strength is incomparable to yours. The fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect laughed and left. The Zhongshuan devil sect's fifth elder's face darkened when he heard this. He swallowed the last sentence that he wanted to say. Gu Qing's divine Tao laws gave him a feeling similar to Venerable Qing Gu of the ancient Tao sect. However, Gu Qing did not know how to use them. He only knew how to unleash his power of laws. However, Venerable Qing Gu and Haomen are sworn enemies. It just so happens that the divine Tao laws that Venerable Qing Gu cultivates are similar. The Tsangshuan Devil Sect's fifth elder's figure flashed and left. If Lord Yang Tian wants to discuss something with the Tsangshuan Devil Sect, he can go directly to the Elders' Hall. You just have to go straight to the Elders' Hall. I don't know where the top 3 elders are, but the 4th elder or the 5th elder will definitely be there. They can decide on some ordinary matters. The burly man smiled embarrassedly. Tianyang glanced at the burly man with a half-smile. The burly man's upper body was covered in all kinds of fiendish runes. His face was also incomparably ferocious. It was comical no matter how one looked at it. Don't worry, I can't be bothered to kill a peak half-saint emperor. Tianyang shook his head and chuckled. He was here to ask the Tsangshuan Devil Sect for the Heaven's Expanse Sacred Hall. In other words, he only needed to confirm the location of the Heaven's Expanse Sacred Spirit. Given the Heaven's Expanse Sacred Spirit's current cultivation, he could take it away directly. There was no need to start a massacre and completely offend the Tsangshuan Devil Sect. Then I want to see if you can kill a peak half-saint emperor in the Tsangshuan Devil Sect. Suddenly, an arrogant and cold voice rang out. Then, a black-clothed old man dressed in robes similar to the Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 5th elder, but with a blazing aura wrapped around his body, appeared in front of Tianyang. As soon as they appeared, several martial god realm auras burst out from them. He was trying to directly suppress Tianyang. Even the Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 5th elder had been defeated. How could the Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder not take this seriously? However, the Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder did not plan to fight the mysterious expert who could defeat the 5th elder without using any martial skills. If he directly captured Yang Tian, no matter how strong the mysterious expert was, he would not dare to attack. There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. As the champion of the Prodigy Tournament, isn't it good to be treated well in Haomen? Why must you come to my Tsangshuan Devil Sect to die? The Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder sneered as waves of pressure erupted once again. He was prepared to take down Tianyang in one fell swoop. However, Tianyang's expression did not change much under this wave of pressure. Instead, it was the burly man from the Tsangshuan Devil Sect who was almost crushed by this god stage pressure. On the other hand, Tianyang glanced at the Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder with interest. Gu Qing. Immediately, Gu Qing, who had been silent beside Tianyang all this while, suddenly attacked. What? The Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder was stunned. Yang Tian was still able to summon an expert under his pressure? However, in this desperate situation, the Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder did not have time to think about why. With a furious roar, flames began to burn. Boom! They collided with Gu Qing's huge fist. Indeed, the Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder was slightly stronger than the 5th elder. However, the 4th elder had made the same mistake as the 5th elder. He had underestimated the strength of Gu Qing's physical body. Through the refinement of the undying god fire and countless treasures, Gu Qing's physical body was not the least bit weaker than the materials of divine artifacts. The Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder felt as if his fist was about to shatter when the two fists collided, and he hurriedly retreated. However, Gu Qing was expressionless as he attacked again when the Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder was retreating. What kind of force is this? The Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder frantically defended against Gu Qing's storm-like attacks as his mind spun rapidly. In his impression, there was no such expert in the Lingfeng stage, or even in the vicinity of the Lingfeng stage. Could it be that Yang Tian has the support of a transcendental force from afar? The Tsangshuan Devil Sect's 4th elder immediately ruled out Tianyang's own reasons. Then, there was only one reason. Stop! The The Tsangshuan devil sect's fourth elder hurriedly roared the moment Gu Qing's fist was about to hit his face. God state origin energy erupted. It forced Gu Qing to retreat several steps. Before Gu Qing could attack, the Tsangshuan devil sect's fourth elder looked at Tianyang. You, which force are you from? End of chapter. Chapter 1624. What kind of force are you from? The fourth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect roared at Tianyang after forcing Gu Qing back. It was impossible for Haoman to have a god-level expert protecting him. What force are you from? Hearing this, Tianyang was stunned for a moment before he understood. It seemed that these people had attributed their strength to the force behind them. Gu Qing, stop. Tianyang said. Gu Qing's fist, which had just been raised, paused when he heard this. He then flew towards Tianyang and stood beside Tianyang like a loyal guard, not saying a word again. Upon seeing this, traces of wariness emerged in the eyes of the fourth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect. It seemed that Tianyang did have a powerful force behind him. Moreover, it was stronger than he had imagined. Gu Qing was such a powerful god-level expert. If he was in the Tsangshuan demon sect, the ancient Dao sect, or the Sky Cloud Hall, he would at least be ranked in the top 5 elders. However, he was like an incomparably loyal servant who obeyed Tianyang's orders. It was hard to imagine what kind of powerful force could make a god-level expert obey a saint king. What do you mean by that? The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled upwards. Since this guy already had such thoughts, then Tianyang would just go along with this guy's wishes. It's impossible for Haoman to have a genius of your level, let alone have a god-level expert protecting you. The fourth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect smiled proudly in his heart. This guy was indeed not a Lingfeng expert. In that case, there's nothing more to say. The fourth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect sneered. You don't have to use Haoman as a cover. I'm afraid that Haoman has already become your possession. Now you've come to my Tsangshuan demon sect. Tell me, what is your purpose? The fourth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect said. Upon hearing this, Tianyang raised his brows. Was the fourth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect so cooperative? He hadn't even given him much guidance, but this guy had already come up with a bunch of settings in his head. What are you talking about? Why can't I understand? Tianyang wouldn't reveal any flaws so quickly if he was putting on an act. Why bother? The fourth elder of the Tsangshuan devil sect sneered. Don't you know which force you belong to? In the Lingfeng realm, only the realm master has the courage to casually take out a godly state expert to protect himself. However, the realm master would not care about Haoman. In other words, you're not someone from the Lingfeng realm. There aren't many people with such strength outside the Lingfeng realm. The immemorial Jiang family, the Dragon Hall, or the Snow Goddess's bloodline. The fourth elder said confidently, as if he had already guessed the answer. Hearing this, Tianyang's pupils constricted, revealing a trace of surprise. You actually managed to guess the identity of the Jiang family? Then, Tianyang immediately controlled Gu Qing to take a step forward, a fierce light flashing in his eyes. Seeing this, the fourth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect's heart suddenly jumped, and he gasped. Yang Tian was from the immemorial Jiang family? The Tsangshuan demon sect's heart jumped as he sensed the increasingly powerful aura from Gu Qing's body. The immemorial Jiang family was an existence that he could not afford to offend. No, I was just guessing. The fourth elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect hurriedly said, and then revealed a fawning smile. May I know why the lord from the immemorial Jiang family has come to the Tsangshuan demon sect? If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. The immemorial Jiang family. These 4 words could be said to be one of the strongest forces in the surrounding 100 territories. Any random expert would be enough to suppress a force like the Tsangshuan demon sect. It was one thing for a disciple of such a terrifying force to come to the Lingfeng territory, but why would he come to Haoman? To be able to have a god-level expert accompanying him, Yang Tian's status in the Jiang family must not be low. Perhaps this Yang Tian was just a fake name to hide his background in the Jiang family. Since you've guessed it, I won't hide it. Tianyang's expression changed, and a faint arrogance emerged on his face. His indifferent eyes stared at the fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect. Hearing this, the fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect's heart jumped, and his palms became slightly sweaty. He seemed to have offended Yang Tian earlier? On the other hand, Tianyang was a little surprised. He did not expect that the force that little girl Jiang Xian belonged to would be so terrifying. Even a sect like the Zhongshuan demon sect, which could instantly defeat all the other forces in the Cloudfire territory, would tremble in fear. When he heard Tianyang nod in confirmation, he immediately became a bootlicker. I heard that there is the Heaven's Expanse Emperor in the Zhongshuan demon sect, and that he is one of the fragments of the Heaven's Expanse Shrine? Tianyang said indifferently, his tone full of arrogance. He did not even bother to look straight at the fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect. Yes, the fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect did not feel the slightest bit inappropriate. He nodded, but then frowned and said, "But this fragment of the Heaven's Expanse Shrine is related to the Zhongshuan demon sect. The Jiang family and the Heaven's Expanse Emperor are old friends." "Never mind, you don't need to know about this." Tianyang only said a few words and did not say anything more. Knowing when to say more and when not to say more was all a trick to bluff. Heavenly Sun had done this kind of thing countless times before. Now it was easy for him to use it. In addition, Tianyang had previously led the fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect to think in the wrong direction. Now that Tianyang flatly denied it, the fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect might not believe him. Then, "I can't decide on my own. Can I ask Lord Yang Tian to wait for a moment and let me contact the other elders?" The fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect was in a difficult position. The fragment of the Heaven's Expanse Shrine was related to the Zhongshuan demon sect's strategy against Haomen. Although the Zhongshuan demon sect did not know the importance of the Heaven's Expanse Shrine to Haomen, it did not prevent them from keeping it. However, Haomen was now under the protection of the archaic Jiang family. Whether the Zhongshuan demon sect still had the guts to deal with Haomen was another matter. There seemed to be no need to keep the fragment of the Heaven's Expanse Shrine. Bring Lord Yang Tian to the Zhongshuan demon sect's first-class guest room. I'll be right back, instructed the fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect. Hearing this, the burly man agreed with a blank expression. Suddenly, the person who had barged into the Zhongshuan demon sect and behaved atrociously had become a member of the archaic Jiang family that even the fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect was afraid of? Then, "Lord Yang Tian, please," said the burly man in a strange tone. In just a few hours, he had changed from an enemy to someone who had no choice but to lead the way for his life, and now he was a member of the archaic Jiang family who had to be received with high standards. The burly man was unable to react to this change in status. Tianyang, on the other hand, smiled softly and asked Gu Qing to step back and follow him. If not for Gu Qing, a genuine god-level guard, it would have been impossible for him to use the name of the archaic Jiang family as a banner. End of chapter. Chapter 1625. At this moment, the fourth elder was sprinting towards the elder hall. A member of the archaic Jiang family had come to the Zhongshuan demon sect. Although their motive was related to Haomen, the fact that someone from the archaic Jiang family had come was enough to report to the first elder. "Why are you back?" The fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect, who was resting with his eyes closed in the elder hall, raised his brows and asked when he saw the fourth elder rushing in. This guy didn't seem to have any injuries. Could it be that he could really subdue the person who was behaving atrociously? Although he hoped so, the fifth elder of the Zhongshuan devil sect was still a little worried. The faction behind Yang Tian must be unimaginably powerful to have a god-level expert protect him. If the faction behind him was lured here, the Zhongshuan demon sect would be in big trouble. Humph, why would I come back? If I wasn't calm enough and wasn't angered by your words, I would have died in his hands long ago. The fourth elder's face darkened when he heard this, as he coldly stared at the fifth elder. This guy had offended someone from the archaic Jiang family, and even made him take the blame? If it wasn't for his reaction being sufficiently swift and taking a stance in time, otherwise, the member of the primeval Jiang clan that had his identity exposed might have asked that guard of his to kill him. Given the Jiang family's strength, killing the fourth elder in the Zhongshuan demon sect was indeed nothing. The fifth elder had said that the strange expert didn't use any martial skills, and just used his divine power and physical strength to beat him to the ground. That was why he was in such a sorry state. The fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect scoffed. Now, he had no choice but to believe it. Since it was true, it shouldn't be too difficult to kill him. What? The fifth elder's pupils shrank when he heard this as he stared at the fourth elder in disbelief. The archaic Jiang family? Yang Tian is from the archaic Jiang family? The fifth elder already had some guesses, but never would he have thought that the archaic Jiang family was such a colossus. The true dragon ranking included the 100 realms. Although the Lingfeng realm was strong in the 100 realms, it was definitely not the strongest. After all, the strongest prodigy on the 100 Realms true dragon roll of the Lingfeng realm was only ranked around the top 100. The strongest were the publicly acknowledged rulers of the 100 Realms, the three great realms controlled by the archaic Jiang family, the Dragon Hall, and the Snow God's lineage. Among the three major realms, the one closest to the Lingfeng realm was the one controlled by the archaic Jiang family. In other words, it was very possible that Yang Tian was from the archaic Jiang family. Furthermore, only a colossus like the immemorial Jiang clan would be able to take out a god state guard. Humph, if you don't know him, don't drag me down with you. If you really anger the lords of the Jiang clan, the entire Zhongshuan devil sect will be buried with you. The fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect said coldly. He then scanned the hall and found that there was no one else besides him and the fifth elder. Strange, where did the great elder and second elder go? The fifth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect was taken aback when he heard this, before his expression changed. They seemed to be accompanying the people of the snow goddess's bloodline. Lord Yang Tian, this is the first-class guest room of the Zhongshuan demon sect. You can cultivate or do whatever you want inside. The burly man trembled as he led Tianyang to the first-class guest room. Tianyang nodded slightly when he heard this. He sized up the so-called first-class guest room in front of him. Rather than calling it a room, it was better to call it a mansion with extremely complete facilities. Its entire shape was similar to a palace, but it was completely black and gave off a somewhat ostentatious and domineering feeling. The word demon in the Zhongshuan demon sect was quite reflective. Tianyang also sensed a trace of a spirit-gathering array. This spirit-gathering array was of a higher level than any spirit-gathering array that Tianyang had seen before. It was as if he could feel the overflowing spirit chi of the universe just by standing outside. The Great Elder and the others haven't gone out recently and have been staying in the sect. I believe you won't be waiting for long. So, I will lead the way here. Feel free to do as you please. The burly man said and was about to leave. The fourth and fifth elders of the Zhongshuan demon sect might have forgotten, but he still remembered. He was the first person to offend someone from the archaic Jiang family. If someone from the archaic Jiang family was petty and directly killed him, he wouldn't be able to reason with them. Hu Kuan, aren't you in charge of guarding the Zhongshuan demon sect's mountain gate for this month? Why have you appeared here? A sharp voice sounded at this moment. The burly man, who was about to leave without looking back, paused in his footsteps as his face abruptly darkened. Don't tell me you think that the Zhongshuan demon sect's cultivation conditions are too trashy and want to come to the first-class guest room to freeload some spirit chi. An incomparably clear mocking voice sounded. Upon hearing this, the burly man called Hu Kuan also turned his head and stared at the man. What does it have to do with you that I've brought an important guest here? Don't tell me you're also here to use the first-class guest room? The burly man sneered. Upon hearing this, Tianyong looked at the newcomer with interest. His face was ordinary and his figure was short and skinny. His cultivation was similar to the burly man's, peak half-saint emperor. The unpleasant mocking voice had come from this person's mouth. Tianyong glanced at the burly man again. Although it was just a simple mockery, the burly man's expression was terrifyingly ugly. It seems that this was an old enemy. Tianyong had no interest in the internal strife of the Zhongshuan demon sect. However, from the burly man's words, it seemed that this first-class guest room had already been reserved. You've also brought an important guest? The short man was taken aback. Then, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world, he leaned back with his hands on his hips and laughed wildly. Ha 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 ha! Hu Kuan, even if you want to lie, you don't have to come up with such a big lie. Guests who are allowed to use the first-class guest room are extremely important. Only the elders can personally receive them. How can a mere gatekeeper like you receive them? Hurry up and scram. The guests accompanied by the first elder are about to arrive. The short man snorted coldly. Hu Kuan was immediately enraged. Just as he was about to speak, an arrogant voice sounded from the side. What? Is there someone in your Zhongshuan demon sect who dares to block the path of the snow goddess faction? A white-haired young man in white clothes walked out from behind. Beside him was an old man in black with a fawning look on his face. The white-haired young man glanced at Tianyong and Hu Kuan as he spoke. Scram. End of chapter. Chapter 1626. Get lost. The white-haired youth's expression was calm, as if he was talking about something very normal. Calm, arrogant, and unquestionable. The smile on the black-clothed elder's face froze when he heard this. His face darkened as he turned to look at Hu Kuan. Are you guarding the door now? What are you doing in the first guest room instead of guarding the door? The black-clothed elder snorted coldly and ordered, Hurry up and leave the first guest room. Also, leave with the people you brought with you. Hu Kuan's expression changed slightly when he heard this. He did not expect the guest the short skinny man had mentioned to be true. However, the young Lord Yang Tian beside him was from the archaic Jiang family. In terms of guest status, no one was more honorable than him. No. The white-haired youth spoke at this moment. I am not asking them to leave. I am asking them to get lost. The white-haired youth deliberately emphasized the word, get lost. The black-clothed elder was taken aback when he heard this, but soon understood. Then why aren't you getting lost? Don't tell me you want me to help you. Hu Kuan's pupils immediately shrank when he heard this, and he looked at the black-clothed elder in disbelief. He hadn't even said a single word, and this elder was actually telling him to scram away in an incomparably humiliating manner? I already said, Hu Kuan, don't be so arrogant in front of me if you don't have anything. The short skinny man immediately burst into laughter, and looked at Hu Kuan mockingly. Also, I don't know who that is. Didn't you hear what Lord Snow said? Why aren't you getting lost? Tianyong raised his eyebrows when he heard this. So, this guy wants me to get lost too? Wait. At this moment, a loud shout suddenly came from the sky. Then, a black shadow appeared between the two groups of people. First Elder. Lord Yang Tian is from the archaic Jiang family, and we cannot offend him. The fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect hurriedly said. He had a bad feeling when he heard that the first elder was accompanying the Snow Gods faction. Given the status of the Snow Gods faction, they naturally had to be in the first guest room. However, the primeval Jiang family wasn't an existence to be trifled with either. If these two groups of people had a conflict, it might cause a conflict between the two giants. As for the Tsangshuan demon sect, it was inevitable that they would be buried along with them in this conflict. Ancient Jiang family? The face of the black-clothed old man, who was the first elder of the Tsangshuan devil sect, stiffened. The snow goddess's lineage had come to the Tsangshuan devil sect, and now the ancient Jiang family? Beside him, the white-haired young man from the snow goddess's faction was also stunned. He looked at Tianyang suspiciously. Why had someone from the ancient Jiang family come to the Tsangshuan devil sect? The white-haired young man's heart sank when he thought of his purpose for coming here. Could it be that the Jiang family also knew about that matter? Someone from the immemorial Jiang family? The white-haired young man snorted coldly and took a step forward. He looked straight at Tianyang, and a white light flashed in his eyes. You said that you are from the Jiang family, but why haven't I seen you in the Jiang family? The white Xinguang also turned colorless at this moment and shot out from the white-haired young man's eyes. This Xinguang contained traces of a spirit attack. If this guy was caught off guard, he would definitely be hit. This way, even if he really was from the ancient Jiang family, he wouldn't be able to. Bang! However, Gu Qing automatically took a step forward, reached out his hand, and directly smashed the Xinguang. Mysterious rays of light flowed on the surface of Gu Qing's skin and forced the colorless and transparent Xinguang back to its original appearance. Then, with a heavy punch, the ray of divine light was smashed into pieces. What are you trying to do? A shaky voice sounded from Gu Qing's mouth. Gu Qing didn't have any intelligence, but his spirit was a fragment of the former sovereign Qing Gu. Ordinary spirit attacks would be blocked by this fragment of sovereign Qing Gu's spirit if they landed on his body. Not to mention that Tianyang himself had a divine soul. Who is it? The white-haired young man's expression changed when he saw this. He looked at Gu Qing, who had suddenly appeared with a pitch-black body. Just by standing in front of the white-haired youth, his tower-like body made the white-haired youth feel a little breathless. You suddenly attacked me and my godly state bodyguard. It seems that the Snow Goddess faction doesn't care about the Jiang family at all. Tianyang waved his hand and gestured for Gu Qing to step back. He looked straight at the white-haired young man. There was a faint smile at the corners of his mouth. Godly state bodyguard? The white-haired young man's pupils shrank when he heard this. Even he didn't have a godly state bodyguard. Could this guy be a hidden genius of the Jiang family? Wait a minute. The first elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect finally realized that something was wrong. Please wait a moment. The first elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect glanced at the white-haired young man and then at Tianyang. His gaze paused especially on Gu Qing. This fellow had blocked the attack that contained a trace of spiritual power without even using a trace of divine power. This strength. Both of you are from the overlord forces of the surrounding 100 territories. Why can't we talk things over nicely? Why don't we go to the guest room? The first elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect hurriedly tried to smooth things over. He couldn't afford to offend either side, so he had no choice but to put down his pride and be the peacemaker. Impossible! The white-haired young man snorted coldly and looked coldly at Tianyang. A trace of fear flashed across his eyes. Tsangshuan demon sect. Today, only the Snow Goddess faction or the Jiang family can exist in the Tsangshuan demon sect. Today, if there is him, there will be no me. If there is me, there will be no him. The white-haired young man said angrily. The first elder of the Tsangshuan demon sect, who was about to continue smoothing things over, suddenly froze. He secretly cursed in his heart. It wasn't easy for this guy to pass, so why did he speak up? I also have the same thoughts. Tianyang smiled softly. Or should I say, Tsangshuan demon sect, give me what I want and I can leave. Of course, if that brat from the Snow Goddess faction also wants it, don't blame me for not caring whose territory this is. The corners of Tianyang's mouth curved into a smile as he said. The white-haired young man's face immediately turned ashen. This Jiang family member doesn't know what's good for him. Can't he tell that I'm determined to get that thing? Songshuan Demon Sect, the Snow Goddess faction, or the Jiang family? Choose one. The white-haired young man said angrily. The first elder of the Songshuan Demon Sect pondered for a moment. Thinking of the conditions that the white-haired young man had given the Songshuan Demon Sect, the first elder's heart immediately heated up. He then turned to Tianyang. My apologies, the Snow Goddess faction came first today. Could you please return first? End of chapter. Chapter 1627. Could you please go back for a while? The first elder of the Songshuan Demon Sect said apologetically. Although he seemed very apologetic, he was still asking Jiang Chen to leave. Oh! Tianyang raised his brows. In the eyes of the Songshuan Demon Sect, the Snow Goddess faction was stronger than the archaic Jiang family? It seemed that the conditions that Jiang Xian offered him were not that good. Are you sure? Tianyang chuckled. Gu Qing raised his head as a fierce glint flashed across his eyes. The first elder of the Songshuan Demon Sect's heart jumped. Of course. The white-haired youth sneered. I'm sorry, but that thing already belongs to the Snow Goddess faction. Your Jiang family should wait for the next one. Then, he turned around and prepared to leave. The first elder of the Songshuan Demon Sect also followed. Tianyang raised his brows. It seemed that the Snow Goddess faction viewed the Songshuan Demon Sect as more important than their relationship with the archaic Jiang family. The Heaven's Expanse Sacred Palace was probably impossible. Forces like the archaic Jiang family and the Snow Goddess faction should not be interested in a fragment of a former emperor weapon. Then, Tianyang did not have a reason, but because of his current status, he naturally could not leave so easily. At this moment, the white-haired youth suddenly turned around. Or you can fight me without your God-state bodyguard. If I win, you will leave immediately. Don't ever think of touching that thing. If you win, I will leave and never mention this again. Confidence flashed across the white-haired youth's eyes. So what if the Jiang family was a genius? So what if he had a God-state bodyguard? The Snow Goddess faction was not weaker than the Jiang family. He did not believe that he would lose to the Jiang family. Moreover, even if he lost, the white-haired youth still had a backup plan. The Snow Goddess faction was determined to obtain that thing from the Songshuan Demon Sect. The Snow Goddess had given him many trump cards. He did not believe that no matter how strong the Jiang family was, they would be able to defeat the Snow Goddess faction. Tianyang was taken aback when he heard this. Then, a smile rose in his heart. This fellow had delivered himself to his doorstep. What's wrong? Why aren't you talking? Seeing that Tianyang had no reaction, the white-haired youth sneered. Or are you afraid? The trump card given to him by the tribe of the Snow Goddess was extremely powerful. Even if a true God Realm expert were to descend, he would not be defeated. It was even to the extent that if he relaxed his mind, it was very likely that he would be killed by the white-haired young man instead. Now, the deity realm expert didn't make a move, and the white-haired young man even secretly spied on Tianyang's cultivation. He was merely a peak saint emperor. He was a demigod. In addition to the many trump cards he had, the white-haired young man could not think of a reason why he would lose. Lord Shui. The expression of the first elder of the Songshuan Devil Sect changed. The white-haired youth came from outside Lingfeng realm, so he naturally did not know what had happened inside. Moreover, they would not know how strong this Yang Tian was. Even Xing Qingzi, an existence with the sovereign divine bloodline, would be defeated if they were fooled by his strength. They must not casually accept his challenge. However, the first elder of the Songshuan Devil Sect changed his mind. The reason why Yang Tian was so powerful was because he had the archaic Jiang family behind him. The force behind Lord Shui was not weaker than the Jiang family, and Lord Shui's cultivation was even stronger than Yang Tian's. There seemed to be no need for a reminder. Gu Qing's icy gaze shot over. Although Gu Qing's cultivation was not as strong as the first elder of the Zhongshuan devil sect, the first elder could not help but shiver when he sensed his gaze. If he continued to speak, the archaic Jiang family might bear a grudge against him before he could even warn Gu Qing. This was too much of a loss, and he could not accept it. Therefore, the first elder of the Zhongshuan devil sect swallowed the second half of his sentence and continued to remain silent. The white-haired youth did not pay any attention to the first elder's actions, and instead looked at Tianyang in an incomparably provocative manner. What? You still haven't decided? Could it be that the dignified members of the primeval Jiang clan only have this much courage? You're scared after facing my snow goddess lineage? The white-haired youth ridiculed. He was not at ease to let Tianyang leave after suffering a loss. That thing was just too important. Although the archaic Jiang family and the snow goddess lineage were not enemies, the archaic Jiang family would never hope for the snow goddess lineage to become stronger. Only by defeating someone from the Jiang family in a direct confrontation would he have no choice but to give up and not have the face to retaliate. Only then would he be able to truly eliminate this hidden danger. In any case, the white-haired youth felt that this was just a matter of convenience. He would definitely win. Since you've issued such a serious challenge, it would indeed be a little unreasonable if I don't accept. Tianyang chuckled softly. Following which, the inner yuan of a peak Saint King slowly circulated. Streams of spirit power were attached to it, making the white-haired youth unable to see what cultivation method Tianyang practiced. The archaic Jiang family must have an inheritance from the archaic era if they dared to call themselves archaic. As a genius of the Jiang family who always had a god-stage bodyguard, he would be seen through at a glance if he did not practice an inheritance cultivation method. Tianyang had become proficient in this after bluffing so many times. I'm just afraid that you won't agree. The white-haired youth laughed heartily when he saw that Tianyang was ready for battle. He had indeed succeeded in provoking this fellow. Next, it was time to let the Zhongshuan demon sect and the Jiang family experience the terrifying strength of the snow goddess lineage. Zhongshuan demon sect, prepare your best martial arts arena for me. The white-haired youth laughed. It was good to let the Zhongshuan demon sect know. Since they were going to welcome him, they had to welcome him like he was their ancestor. Yes. Upon hearing this, the first elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect nodded and instructed the fourth elder beside him, "Go and prepare the battle arena." The fourth elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect seemed to have woken up from a dream. His gaze swept between Tianyang and the white-haired youth as he felt that something was amiss. Could it be that Haoman's Heaven's Expanse shrine fragment contained some other great secret? The mysterious successor of the archaic Jiang family was going to fight the genius of the snow goddess lineage, who had come to the Zhongshuan demon sect to ask for something. The moment this news was confirmed, it spread throughout the entire Zhongshuan demon sect like a storm. The archaic Jiang family, the snow goddess lineage, no matter which one it was, they were all terrifying existences that the Zhongshuan demon sect disciples could only look up to. Today, they were going to fight in the arena? Before the Heavenly Sun duo arrived, the Zhongshuan devil sect's battle arena was already packed with countless people. The white-haired youth of the snow goddess lineage sneered. So what if they were from the archaic Jiang family? He was not to be trifled with. End of chapter. Chapter 1628. The Zhongshuan demon sect. The battle arena. Normally, only people like Lin Shan and Li Xuanzang would have a bit of a crowd when they fought. The usually deserted arena was now bustling with noise. It was for no other reason than the factions behind the two who were about to fight. The archaic Jiang family is fine, but our Zhongshuan demon sect is within their sphere of influence. It's normal for someone to come over because they have nothing better to do. Li Xuanzang frowned as he looked at the white-haired youth who had appeared below. However, the Snow Goddess's faction is located in the extreme north of the 100 territories. Our Lingfeng territory is towards the southeast. There is also the Jiang family's sphere of influence between us. What is he doing here? Li Xuanzang frowned. Lin Shan nodded. Indeed. Indeed. Could it be that one of them is fake? Lin Shan said. However, this was not what he wanted to say. When Tianyang approached the Zhongshuan demon sect, Lin Shan felt the slave mark in the depths of his spirit sea continuously heat up. It was as if it was going to burn through his Yuan spirit. Lin Shan could immediately tell from such an obvious reaction that Tianyang was here. The white-haired youth from the Snow Goddess's faction had already appeared, and it was obvious that he was not Tianyang. In other words, the Tianyang was someone from the archaic Jiang family. In order to play his part as a slave, Lin Shan naturally changed the topic to the Snow Goddess's faction. Oh! Li Xuanzang was taken aback as his eyes turned cold. Could it be that someone dares to pretend to be from the Snow Goddess's faction? Who dares to lie to our Zhongshuan demon sect? Li Xuanzang's gaze immediately turned extremely sharp as he looked at the white-haired youth. Lin Shan sneered in his heart, but he did not show it. He was still Tianyang's slave, so his identity was more important. Yang Tian. I Shui Tianyang am here. Where are you? Could it be that you want to throw away the face of the archaic Jiang clan by fleeing at the last minute? The white-haired youth, Shui Tianyan, snorted coldly when he saw the empty space in front of him. Wisps of peak half-martial god realm energy burst out. The surging sound waves spread throughout the entire martial arts arena. Yang Tian? Hearing this, Li Xuanzang was startled. He thought of the terrifying existence that had defeated him in the prodigy competition, causing him to fail in the top 20. It's probably just the same name. Li Xuanzang shook his head and threw this unrealistic guess to the back of his mind. Yang Tian should still be in Haomen, so why would he come to the Zhongshuan devil sect to die? One must know that Li Xuanzang had not even made it into the top 20, which was a disgrace to the Zhongshuan devil sect. After the Zhongshuan demon sect punished Li Xuanzang accordingly, they also hated Yang Tian, the culprit behind all of this. I'm just giving you more time to breathe. At this moment, a young voice sounded. Then, a figure walked out from the opposite side of Shui Tianyan. There was a faint smile on his face as he looked at Shui Tianyan, who had unscrupulously released his peak half-martial god realm energy, and a black light flashed in his hand. The great void sword embryo appeared in his hand. However, due to the lack of light, Li Xuanzang and the others could not see what Yang Tian, who came from the archaic Jiang family, looked like. They did not dare to recklessly use the power of their primordial spirits to observe. Why do I feel that this silhouette is very familiar? Li Xuanzang looked at Tianyang, who was in the shadows, and was puzzled. He had a feeling that he had seen this member of the archaic Jiang family somewhere before. However, he had not been anywhere except for the prodigy competition, so how could he have seen the prodigy competition? Let me breathe? However, Shui Tianyan's face darkened when he heard this, and anger flashed in his eyes. What can a mere peak sage emperor do, even if he is from the Jiang family? Shui Tianyan roared angrily, and in the next moment, his figure flashed. Rays of dazzling white light burst out, fusing with Shui Tianyan's genuine origin energy, and fiercely bombarded Tianyang. Die! Shui Tianyan roared angrily, and directly charged towards Tianyang. Tianyang smiled and slashed down with the great void sword embryo. A sharp sword radiance burst out from the great void sword embryo's blade. It collided with Shui Tianyan's white light. Boom! Streaks of white light burst out in all directions, illuminating the shadows in the area. Tianyang's face appeared in the vision of all the spectating disciples. That is, Li Xuanzang's pupils contracted when he saw the face. Yang Tian? Yang Tian from the archaic Jiang family was actually Haomen Yang Tian from the prodigy competition? No wonder he's so strong. At this moment, Lin Shan suddenly spoke, his face also filled with shock. With Haoman's strength, it's impossible for him to cultivate someone like Yang Tian. Since he's from the Jiang family, everything makes sense now, Lin Shan said in shock. Li Xuanzang was stunned when he heard that. Then, he looked at Tianyang, who was still fighting calmly. No wonder. Li Xuanzang sighed. It was indeed possible for the archaic Jiang family to cultivate a peak sage emperor who could easily defeat a peak demigod. However, if the person from the snow goddess's bloodline was real, in that case, Yang Tian's advantage from before would be gone. He blocked it? Seeing that his attack was blocked, Xue Tianyan was also stunned. Then, his expression quickly changed. In the next moment, rays of dazzling white light burst out again. Ice seal. Then, rays of frost energy were released from Xue Tianyan's hands. Streams of godly realm aura were released from his body. A snow-white god's shadow vaguely appeared behind Xue Tianyan. The snow-white light was even brighter. In the next moment, the snow-white light that contained the power of godly realm seemed to be illusory as it passed through Tianyang's great void sword embryo. Tianyang raised his eyebrows. He wanted to use the true yuan in his body to resist. However, how could Xue Tianyan give Tianyang any time to react? Snow Goddess's blessing! Xue Tianyan shouted. The snow goddess's shadow behind him released rays of Xinguang again. Its speed was several times faster than before. In the next moment, the snow-white light hit Tianyang's chest. Layers of ice spread from Tianyang's chest to Tianyang's entire body. Its speed was abnormally fast. Boom! Suddenly, layers of icicles exploded from Tianyang's body. In an instant, Tianyang's entire body was frozen. End of chapter. Chapter 1629. Boom. Tianyang's entire being seemed to have turned into an ice sculpture. Maintaining the posture of circulating his origin energy, he sank into a layer of ice. Thick icicles pierced out in all directions. This is what happens to anyone who dares to oppose the snow goddess faction. Xue Tianyang sneered when he saw that Tianyang had completely sunk into his ice. Seeing the countless shocked gazes around him, Xue Tianyang's heart swelled. The people of the Lingfeng realm were indeed inferior to the 3 lords of the 100 realms. Such a small trick was enough to make so many people gasp. Yang Tian was defeated just like that? Li Xuanzang was also dumbfounded. He had easily defeated him, and had even insta-killed almost all of the other participants in the Prodigy tournament with a single move. He had even killed Xing Qingzi's Heavenly Sunday. Just like that, he was sealed in ice by a disciple of the Snow Goddess faction? After a few seconds, the ice didn't move at all. Xue Tianyang, on the other hand, was ready to leave. It's not challenging at all. Xue Tianyang smiled disdainfully. He had only used a little of the Snow Goddess power, and this member of the archaic Jiang family had fallen. The speed at which he was defeated made Xue Tianyang feel like he was facing an impostor. However, Lin Shan's face was expressionless as he looked at the layer of ice. Through the slave mark, Lin Shan could sense Tianyang in the ice. There wasn't even the slightest bit of injury. He was as lively as he was in the air before. In the ice. Why does the snow goddess power feel so familiar? Tianyang sensed the cold air coming from all directions, and doubts flashed across his mind. Or rather, it had already gone beyond the realm of familiarity. It was as if he had been in contact with it day and night. The snow goddess faction definitely has something. Tianyang's eyes narrowed. It seemed that he would gain quite a lot from this trip to the Zhongshuan demon sect in addition to the Heaven's Expanse Sacred Hall. Since that was the case, he couldn't let Xue Tianyang go so easily. Boom! Tianyang's body shook, and the layers of ice turned into ice shards that filled the sky. Then, Tianyang waved his right hand and released a strong suction force. The ice formed by the power of the snow goddess continued to gather in Tianyang's hands. It formed a storm of ice and dust. He flicked his finger. This ice dust storm charged towards Xue Tianyao. Xue Tianhao, who thought he had won and was about to leave, suddenly felt the killing intent behind him. He turned around and punched out. Boom! The ice dust storm collided with Xue Tian's fist. What is it? Xue Tianyan's ice dust storm naturally couldn't do anything to Xue Tianyan. However, Xue Tianyan's punch successfully shattered the ice dust storm. Immediately after, the scattered ice dust spread in all directions and enveloped the entire martial arts arena. Camouflage. Xue Tianyang snorted and released streams of Yuan spirit power. Even if the ice dust contained Xue Tianyang's Yuan spirit power and could interfere with his senses, so what? The power of his primordial spirit was not something that could be resolved so easily. However, the moment Xue Tianyang released his Yuan spirit power, a sword light shot out from a corner of the ice dust storm and pierced towards Xue Tianyang from an extremely tricky angle. Fast enough. Seeing this, Xue Tian's face sank. A white light flashed, erasing the sword light as well as all the ice and dust that obstructed his vision. However, the moment the ice dust was erased, the sword light that filled the sky also charged towards Xue Tianyang. Boom! 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 Countless sword lights shot towards Xue Tianyang and almost plowed the entire Zhongshuan demon sect's martial arts arena. Upon seeing this, countless Zhongshuan devil sect disciples in the spectator stands gasped in shock. Shattering the ice dust that Xue Tianyang used to attack him into ice dust and then turned it into a storm to attack Xue Tianyang. In fact, it wasn't very impressive. There were quite a number of cultivators in the Zhongshuan demon sect who could do it. However, Xue Tianyang had calculated the consequences of Xue Tianyang's punch and made the ice dust that didn't have much effect explode into obstacles that filled the sky. Furthermore, the ice dust contained traces of Xue Tianyang's Yuan spirit power and caused him to lose track of Tianyang. Countless people felt ashamed of their inferiority in this aspect. Moreover, he had condensed so many terrifying attacks in such a short period of time. He really has Yang Tian's style. Seeing this, Li Xuanzang's lips curled into a wry smile. Back then, Tianyang had directly unleashed a wave of terrifying large-scale attacks in the beginning of the battle and wiped out the people from the three sects who had besieged him. Although he didn't see it with his own eyes, he could imagine it from the descriptions of the other geniuses. He had unleashed his strongest battle power and wiped out the remaining peak Lingfeng realm geniuses, just like how he had wiped out the three sects' disciples. Such terrifying strength! It would be wrong to measure it with one's cultivation base. Could it be that Yang Tian is really a member of the Jiang family? Seeing this, the first elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect who had been watching the battle turned serious. Although the attack just now was made up of 10,000 swords and its power was terrifying, the Yuan spirit power it contained was only at the peak Saint Emperor level. In other words, Yang Tian's control and exploration of his own strength had far exceeded the limits of their imagination. Other than the archaic Jiang family, the first elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect couldn't find another force that could nurture such a genius. In other words, no force could compete with the archaic Jiang family, who was the ruler of the 100 territories. If that's the case, our previous decision was a big mistake. The first elder of the Zhongshuan demon sect muttered to himself, a trace of worry on his face. Although he had tried his best to smooth things over, everyone could see the bias in his words. If this caused the archaic Jiang family to be dissatisfied with the Zhongshuan demon sect, the Zhongshuan demon sect would no longer be a matter of loss. As expected of the archaic Jiang family, to have hidden such a move. A peak Saint Emperor can make me, Xue Tianyang, so miserable. The sword light dissipated, but Xue Tianyang was still standing on the same spot. However, drops of blood flowed down from his arms and dripped onto the ground. Strangely, although the blood appeared to be slightly red, most of it carried a white light. "You forced me to do this!" Xue Tianyang roared. In the next moment, His black eyes turned snow white. His aura also crazily soared at this moment. Tianyang's expression changed. The familiar aura from before appeared again. Bang! A loud sound came from Shui Tianyang's body. 7 snow-white foxtails appeared behind him. End of chapter.